You can't say enough good things about this record, man. And it's like I said, just that the caveman Neanderthal, like knuckle dragging vibe on this record. And yeah, this is the kind of like record that like before you rob a 7-Eleven or something like that, like you're in the car.
That's in the back. Yes, that's on.
That's playing in the background. And then you're like, oh, let's go. And you run in there, kick the door, and then rob a 7-Eleven and listen to this record. You know what I mean?
Greetings, friends. Welcome to episode 186 of Into the Necrosphere. This week, Sheriff Mike Scondotto and Sensei Mike Hill, co-hosts of Necromaniacs, founder members of the Horsemen of the Podcasting Apocalypse, joins me for another 666 countdown special. We are counting down our favorite death metal albums of the 1990s, and I've got to say, in comparison to the black metal special we did probably about 7 months ago now, these lists were a lot harder to round down, but you are going to be getting a lot of entertainment, a lot of debate, and a lot of laughs coming your way very shortly, celebrating what, in my opinion, is one of the very best eras in all of music. Before we get to that, though, Sick is, in my opinion, one of the very best new underground exports coming out of Australia. They are fronted by the great Matt Prizzo. I premiered one of the tracks off of this album a couple of weeks ago to some critical acclaim, and the album has now officially been released. It's called Cast Below to Rise Above. It is utterly devastating, and I'm going to get you all warmed up with the track off of that record right now. This is a song called The Dragon God. You just listened to The Dragon God off of Cast Below to Rise Above. The band, of course, is Sick, fronted by the great Matt Prizzo. He will be on the podcast very soon. That song also features a guest appearance by another man amongst men, Jason Pepiat of Psychroptic. An absolutely sensational record that deserves your love and support, so go and check it out on Bandcamp right now. Link in the description to the podcast as always. And if you do buy yourself anything there, let Matt and the gang know that it was old Jackson at Into the Necrosphere that sent you. If you are new to the podcast, make sure that you elbow drop the subscribe button on your platform of choice. Follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And if you really want to show your love and support for the podcast, then head over to the Into the Necrosphere Teespring store. Buy yourself a t-shirt or a hoodie. All of the money that I make on Teespring gets plowed straight back into the podcast, and a massive thanks to all of you for the support that you have shown me on there so far. Very critically, you also need to take note of the fact that I am part of the podcasting Illuminati, the horsemen of the podcasting apocalypse. Every Monday, Brandon Legion brings you Horrorwolf 666. Every Tuesday, yours truly casts hexes and slays poses on Into the Necrosphere. Every Wednesday, Sensei Mike Hill brings you his long-running podcast, Everything Went Black. Every Thursday, he returns with my favorite podcast of the week, Necromaniacs, alongside his co-hosts, Sheriff Mike Scondotto and Professor Jeff Kashid. And then every Sunday, the Reverend Carl Haikara brings you a deep dive into the weird, the arcane, and the esoteric with his podcast, Soul Knox. I am a guest on this past week's episode of Soul Knox. Carl and I had a discussion about the Paradise Lost discography, and we chose our favorite songs off of every record. Really, really great catching up with him again, and we've got a couple more of those discography deep dives lined up for the near future, so if you like this one, there's more to come. Also, very critically, don't go anywhere when I am done with the Mikes Hill and Scondotto, because I'm going to be talking about the two re-recordings that the Cavalera brothers have released this past weekend, Bestial Devastation and Morbid Visions. And then, of course, there's a new Dying Fetus single that's been released alongside a host of other new songs. Those will all be rounded up for judgment for my weekly news rant coming at you at the very end of the podcast. Right now, though, sit back and enjoy as I welcome my two fellow horsemen of the podcasting apocalypse, Mike Hill and Mike Scondotto, for the countdown of the best 90s death metal albums. That was the thing with this list, as you were just saying before I hit record. Every time you're like, okay, that's the definitive list, then you go back, maybe you're listening to something on Spotify, the algorithm picks up that another record, you're like, how the fuck did I forget about this? So yeah, no, it's been a very, very tough task. I'm glad we're finally doing this, though. I mean, it's been what, 7 months since the last the kick-off 666 special, which the Horsemen I see have co-opted, and we've brought that into multiple different avenues, which is very cool. But welcome back, guys. Awesome to see you both again. Before we get started properly, we do need to do just a quick update on both of your various musical endeavors. Mr. Hill, anything new on the Tombs or the Scorpion Throne front that you can update anybody on?
Well, we're deep into writing the next Tombs record, and we're scheduled to go in the studio and record in December for a 2024 release. Had a bunch of frustrating tour things happen to us, but we're going to be doing shows local, at least regionally, in that's the Northeast in the United States in the fall, and some bigger tour plans for 2024 to coincide with the release of our new albums in the works. I have another project in addition to Scorpion Throne, which is going to be released next month, called Begotten Sons, and I think I previewed you that, guys. Check out.
Yeah, I think you have indeed.
Yeah, and it's that's just one of those things. I just dreamt it up and did it. There was no label behind it, and there's me and a former drummer that I played in a band with like years and years and years ago, and it's just the two of us just making slow, depressing music. So it's coming out soon.
Nice.
Yeah. You decided, as far as Tombs is concerned, probably quite wisely not to get into the heavy traffic of this year's release schedule, because I mean the rest of this year is so stacked. It is it's absurd. And it's like there's like high profile stuff that I think is just going to get drowned out by the noise, because there's just so much between now and December to get really excited about.
Yeah, the next Tombs record will be out like late spring of 2024. Maybe early summer. That's like the tentative release schedule for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
And Mr. Scondotto, any news on your end? You guys are going to be playing some Confusion shows reasonably soonish, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, the Confusion discography is out. Thank you for the support of it, Mr. Jackie.
Of course.
It's doing well. The vinyl comes out anytime now. Of course, there's always a little delay with the vinyl.
Yeah.
But we're going to be playing September 30th in Brooklyn at the Brooklyn Monarch, our first show in 16 years, with Terror and Killing Time and a whole bunch of other bands. It's like a 2-day hardcore fest, which should be awesome. And then I'm actually playing tonight in Brooklyn, New York, on the 15th, which is when we're recording this, with my other band Inhuman, for my birthday. So it should be fun.
Is your birthday today?
My birthday's next week. My birthday is the 22nd, but the show is tonight. Yeah, it should be a good time. And my other project, The Last Stand, has a vinyl release coming in the next week or two that was extremely delayed. So I'll be happy to get that out there as well. It's a split vinyl release with friends of ours from a band in California called One Choice. And, came out 2021, but the physical came out this year. So a little bit of a delay, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That bill that you just mentioned now with the hardcore festival sounds like a guarantee for Broken Bones. I mean, a Terror show alone typically would guarantee that. But what's totally. I know we're going to need some time to go through these records, but I am curious, and maybe we do this as a separate conversation down the road. But what kind of led to the Confusion resurrection?
There's a couple of things. I mean, the one key thing was that the label owner of Generation Records, Mark, he has a record store in New York City, Generation Records, which is great for like hardcore, punk, death metal, black metal, what have you. Someone sold him a very large demo collection, and he put them all up on eBay. And it was a lot of old New York hardcore stuff from the late 80s and early 90s. And he had 3 Confusion demos, and they sold for a shit ton of money. And it piqued his interest. He goes, Mike, that's your old band, right? I'm like, yeah. He goes, I'm really surprised. I can't believe how much these sold for. And I go, yeah, I can't believe it either. And honestly, in the past few years, the band, just really by word of mouth, and the younger hardcore generation just really started paying attention to the band and citing the band as one of the earliest forms of mixing death metal and hardcore. And I mean, we were doing it in like 1990, which is a lifetime ago. And it's just weird, man. It's just sometimes shit happens, like every good band. And I would like to think it was a good band. Sometimes it just takes a while for people to find certain things, we had a following back then locally, and in like the tri-state and in Europe, because we had a 7-inch put out in France. But we kind of broke up too soon in a way. We broke up at the end of 94 and did a sporadic show here and there. And those shows were always very well received. But I don't know. It's almost like a little lost on me, but it's a great feeling.
I can imagine. And I also assume that when the guy from Generation Records reached out to you, you did like a Kenny Powers, dollar bills, y'all. And he was talking about
well, it wasn't really, I mean, it wasn't that it was, look, we're not talking about thousands and thousands of dollars. Yeah. It was just interesting to see that it did so well,
well, that someone had that degree of affinity for it, that it was going to, or at least a group of people had that much affinity for it, that it was going to increase in value to the extent that it did.
Right. I mean, these were very low, like 200 copies of each demo, maybe if that went out there.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I just think it was a timing thing. In the early 90s, it was an interesting time. Hardcore was not as big as it was in the late 80s, and there's a few, bands that I think really kind of stood out, and I think we did something that was a little different, and people paid attention to it. So
yeah,
that's as much as I could say. I don't like tooting my own horn.
Well, I think we should definitely do a Confusion episode at some point, or just a New York hardcore episode generally. But
that would be fun.
I right before we dive into the death metal, one final thing. I was so fucking jealous seeing the clip of, I can't remember if it was which one of you posted it, but the clip of Misfits doing Comeback when you guys saw them last weekend.
Oh yeah,
my favorite Misfits song by no short stretch. It is. I absolutely love it, and it was always like the one song where you wish, just as in all the times I've seen Danzig, I think I've seen him do like 2-3 Misfit songs at the end of a set a couple of times, and you always wish it's like just that. I know it's unlikely, but just surprise me with either that or To Walk the Night, or
yeah.
But sadly, neither have happened. But yeah, man, I mean, the whole show just looked fucking awesome.
It was great, and that was my third time seeing them. I saw them at Madison Square Garden, and I saw their first show back in the Jersey area in 2018, and this was the first time they did Comeback of those shows, so that was really cool.
I mean, it's very much a deep cut. It's not something that it certainly did. It didn't feature on any of the greatest hits collections.
No, it's only on Legacy of Brutality, which is a mishmash record. Actually, I mean, it's static. It's essentially the first record, but it's missing some of the tracks until they put it out properly in '97. I mean, Legacy comes out in like '86 or something like that. I mean, it's a great fucking song. It's one of my favorites.
Genius.
What did you think,
Absolute
Mike?
Genius.
Oh, I mean, that's also. I mean, I like that style that they had, like American Nightmare or Comeback, like the kind of more rockabilly sort of vibe. That's I always thought that was kind of like their Danzig strength, really. And that was actually the first time I'd seen the Misfits, because I was kind of rejecting I was being a hipster.
The Misfits cover band.
Yeah, I was being kind of a hipster, but then like when I saw these things, something was just like, man, I should just get on this and get tickets for this thing and check it out. And I had a great time, and I was, I thought it was. Glenn sounded great. AC Slade was awesome on guitar, if you know what I mean.
Yes, he was in the background, because Doyle is punching his guitar, so AC has to play his guitar.
Yeah. So there was some, there was some solid rhythm guitar going on by AC Slade, which is cool. Dave Lombardo, of course, is great. And Glenn was awesome. Yeah.
I for whatever miscalculations Glenn has made as a filmmaker, musically, to me, he's the man. And it's so cool to see him. Like, the last time I saw him was 2018, I think, and he still sounded sensational. The dude is like late 60s to still sound that strong and give that much, that energetic a performance as well. I just think is fucking awesome. He's all over the stage. He doesn't sound like, Axl Rose, who now sounds like the old man from Family Guy. But it's, the guy's evergreen. Hopefully it continues for at least a couple more years, because I would definitely like to see him a few more times.
Yeah, he's 68, man. It's wild. And
wow, I didn't think he was that old, actually. Damn.
Yeah, I thought it was definitely vocally his best time of the 3 times as well. So yeah man, bless Danzig.
All right, let's dive into it. Mr. Mike Hill. So let's just clarify the criteria here, because this is the kind of list where there's going to be a million comments about, how could you not pick this album? This one is better than that one. It's like, okay, it's got nothing to do with what was the most influential. It's got nothing to do with what was the most popular, what was the most critical on the scene. None of that. Criteria is six albums, death metal records from the 1990s. For me, and I'm sure it's the same for you guys, what made the biggest impression on me at the time, and what has had the most enduring impact on me? What's the records I keep going back to when I want to listen to death metal from that era? So that is the criteria. It's got nothing to do with anything else. There's nothing scientific to this. But Mike Hill, do you want to start with your number 6?
Sure. I'm starting off with a controversial record too, by the way. Of course, this is Napalm Death's Utopia Banished from 1992. And, people will say, oh, yeah, they're a grindcore band, they'll split hairs, but this record is a death metal record. I'll go to the mass for that, definitely. I I mean, it's got Barney on it, but it's some people might be like elitist about it and just want the Lee Dornian era, which is a great era. But this record is something that to this day I listen to this album. It has that groovier kind of vibe to it at times, and it mixes up the blasts and just kind of like the more like almost like East Coast hardcore kind of like grooves to it. That's why I really dig this record.
Well, it was the first time that they started mixing in a lot of those more industrial elements and the stuff that Shane really likes, like the Swans, Killing Joke. Those elements started to creep in, and I would say basically from Harmony Corruption onwards, I don't really think it's fair to just call Napalm Death a grindcore band anymore, because they're not. They're not the same band that did From Enslavement to Obliteration. They're a band that basically just became their own thing. And even a record like Diatribes, I mean, what are you going to call it other than death metal? It's not grindcore.
No, totally.
So,
people hang on to that term a lot. Now, and I think they've even turned another corner in their career right now with what they're doing currently.
Utopia Banished is great. I mean, okay, you have Harmony Corruption, which is the most death metal-y, I think, right?
Yeah.
It was produced at Mars Sound. It's of its time, It's got a Deicide appearance. It's got, Glenn Benton. But Utopia Banished has the death metal, but it's the beginning of the experimentation. But it's still a banger, and it's still heavy. And then you go to Fear, Emptiness, Despair in 94, and that is like we're really going to add even more elements in. So Utopia, for some people, is almost like the last death metal-y record, But to me, it's the kickoff of experimentation, honestly, and that's what makes that actually a really cool record.
In some ways, for me, I've reflected on this a lot, because I mean, everyone who listens to the podcast knows I'm a massive Napalm Death fan. I think one of the things, just to reiterate again, that I truly appreciate and admire about them is that they are able to this day make music that sounds interesting and relevant and challenging. They've never been a band that has stood still creatively, and a lot of that comes from Shane Embry. So for me, also, when I think about this band, Utopia Banished is, to me, if you think about the direction that they took, and I think it's in keeping with your logic, Sheriff Scondotto, this to me is the second Napalm Death record, the debut record of the lineup of the Napalm Death in the form we've come to know and love them over the years is Harmony Corruption. This is the second record, and this really is, as you say, starting to put those building blocks in place for what was going to come down the road. I love their whole entire 90s era. So I mean, I'm one of those folks that people were fucking shitting all over Inside the Torn Apart and Words from the Exit Wound. I love those records. I like Diatribes too. Interesting thing about Utopia Banished is there's a song called Arianisms, which was inspired by Barney's experience of visiting my home country.
Wow. I never knew
because they
that.
went to South Africa back in, I think it was 1991. It's right before the making of this record. And I think that they got there at a time when the country was in a state of transformation, state of evolution. And I think some of the stuff that he saw, because he repeats a lyric there, keeping each to their own, which was actually, I mean, literally, it was enshrined in that was the essence of the apartheid's law was keeping each to their own. So very interesting that. I love Utopia Banished, love it.
Great pick.
Okay, Scondotto.
Okay, in keeping with a bit of a similar theme from the black metal list, my number 6 is a little off the beaten path for some people, but for some people, it's definitely a band that I think they like, and it is Edge of Sanity's Purgatory Afterglow, which was released on October 1st, 1994, on Black Mark Productions. This record is insane. I first heard Edge of Sanity January of 95. I remember it well because I used to buy a magazine, just a zine/magazine called Sounds of Death. Do you guys remember Sounds of Death magazine?
Yeah, SOD, definitely.
SOD, correct.
Black and white. That was an awesome magazine, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it came with a CD in every issue. And the CDs generally were label samplers. And this particular issue that I bought in January of 95 at See Here, fanzine store in New York City, an old legendary fanzine spot in New York City, long since gone, had a Black Mark Productions CD sampler. And truthfully, one of the only bands I knew on Black Mark in January of 95 was Bathory, of course. And I wanted to check out some of the other stuff that they had. And this track comes on called Twilight. And it starts off very mellow. It's got like keyboards and a guy singing and clean vocals. And then it just kicks in with this fucking riff that just, I've never forgot this. I never forgot this moment. And I was just like, what the fuck is this? And it's just this ass-ripping death metal with really good vocals. And the Purgatory Afterglow record takes you on like a roller coaster ride of death metal, but it even mixes in like goth rock and just like these weird moments. But the death metal songs on this record are fucking insane. Like Dan Swano might be one of the greatest single minds and musicians in the history of the genre, for me at least. I mean, he's known as a producer as well, and Bloodbath, and just a whole bunch of shit. But Edge of Sanity, I mean, if they never toured. They were a weird band. They were around for a good while. They were around for almost like 10 years, literally. But they didn't tour much. They didn't play out much. But I always felt that if this band would have been on a different label, if they were on Earache, if they were on Central Media, if they were on Roadrunner, and they toured, then everyone would know exactly who they were. So my pick, Edge of Sanity, Purgatory Afterglow.
I think it's a great pick. I was a particularly big fan of Crimson, which was the sequel to Purgatory Afterglow.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about Edge of Sanity has always been for me how massively far ahead of their time they were. They were doing things on Crimson that bands have done 20 years later, and everybody is looking at it as though it's, innovative and unique. And it's like, guys. And Dan Swano and the boys did this some time ago.
Crimson, Mike Hill, I don't know if was one track when it came out on CD, 96. It's one track. It's one song for was it an hour? Do you remember that?
Yeah,
whoa.
Yeah,
fucking nuts. Yeah. But Purgatory Afterglow, listeners, please check this record out. It is a barn burner.
Great pick.
Yeah, so they're always I've always been more lenient towards the bands like that with like the progressive kind of element to it, where you can hear different. Paradise Lost is another great band that they've changed constantly throughout their career, and started out as a death metal band and moved into this kind of like weird goth rock vibe, which I really dig too. So yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, actually, if I think about my own musical formation, I do think it was bands like Edge of Sanity that really also helped open my mind up to a lot of different things. Because when I was first getting into death metal, there was a period of time in my life where everything that wasn't death metal was garbage. I got rid of fucking everything that didn't have death metal vocals, violence, and that's it. So, I think it was bands like Edge of Sanity that kind of helped me come full circle and really kind of expanded my thinking around music and around what was possible, because you'll hear in Crimson, for example, that goth rock influence that Mike, you mentioned as well, and you go, shit man, this sounds fucking cool, I need to find bands that sound like this. So you dig up Sisters of Mercy, you dig up Bauhaus and bands like that, and then you might hear something else that's maybe more on the progressive side. It's like, I need to check out this band. Great choice. And very weirdly, I was when you were saying it's off the beaten path, I was going through my mind like, what is it going to be? I thought Sinister. I thought maybe Hypocrisy. I was like, oh no, maybe Edge of Sanity. So Edge of Sanity was on the list of ones I thought you might bring up.
Yeah.
Okay, for me, number 6 is Bolt Thrower, the Fourth Crusade. So the fourth Bolt Thrower record, it sounds like a fucking piece of artillery firing up, ready for war when the first song kicks in. Came out in 1992 on Earache Records, back in the halcyon days of Earache Records. It's an album that is so filled with just brilliant hooks, awesome riffs, grooves, and it is to this day so ridiculously heavy, and yet so infectious. You listen to a song like Where Next to Conquer, or As the World Burns. I mean, those are songs that stick in your head. There's almost like a there's almost like a pop music sensibility as far as hooks and things like that are concerned, or catchy melodies are concerned about this band. But I mean, they made, in my view, not a single poor record in any case. I mean, the album that came out after this, For Victory, fantastic. Mercenary was fucking awesome. They ended arguably on their high point, which is Those Once Loyal in 2005. But Fourth Crusade was the record that introduced me to them. I first got this. I had a cassette with this on one side and Cannibal Corpse's The Bleeding on the other side. But this was the album that I kept going back to. This was just it was just fucking crushing. And, also just shout out to, because you've had him on your podcast, Mike Hill, Josh Barnett coming in when he used to go walk to the octagon at the UFC playing the Fourth Crusade in the background. What a fucking cool walkout tune.
Nice. Oh yeah, definitely, man. Josh is the real deal, man. That dude is like, you can talk for hours and hours and hours just about music, comics, and movies and all that stuff. He's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are no bad bolt throw records. Even the first record with the drum fill screw ups. Ever catch those? They're pretty funny on the first record. Legend band, amazing band. They've now kind of become a thing on the internet. They've become like they've kind of become a band to say that you like and listen to when you probably don't even listen to them or know who they are. So they've become like this weird kind of bolt thrower thing, like on Instagram and social media, which is, I guess, good and bad. Doesn't take away from their awesomeness, though. And any exposure to them is a good thing.
100%.
I actually, one of the early revisions in my list had them on there too. Not this specifically this record, but I was trying to find a place for them. So a little foreshadowing, I guess. So
my first exposure was War Master. And I would just kind of look at the CD cover, just like stare at it, for like 10 minutes straight. And just like, I want to be in this world, I want to kill people with swords. And just like the world, and the coolest thing is the appearance of that riff on every record is just the greatest fucking thing ever. You know what I'm saying?
Well, that opening to War Master Unleashed Upon Mankind, the da 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 da, it's just so fucking heavy. They were the masters of like building anticipation, and it's one of the bands that I am most disappointed I never got to see live. They did play a show 1 year when I was on holiday. This must have been like 2008, 2009. I wasn't in the country, so I couldn't see them. But it was one of the final shows that they ever played, and I'm still kicking myself about it because I can only imagine how great these records would sound live.
They are literally the only death metal band that I've never seen, that I loved, that I never saw live, and I saw many death metal bands that I don't love that I saw live. Yeah. They were supposed to play Lemoore in '92, canceled. And then they were supposed to play the Wetlands in '94. They were supposed to headline a Death Fest with Benediction, and only Benediction played. Bolt Thrower canceled that show as well. So 2 times I went to see them, and they did not play. Sucks.
Yeah. No, my 2 big regrets: Bolt Thrower and Nevermore. Nevermore, one of my favorite bands ever. Never got to see them either, but that's for a different episode. Okay, Mike Hill, you're number 5.
Okay, so people are going to make fun of me for my list in general, I think, because it's a pretty basic pumpkin spice death metal list that I have here. It's like, I don't veer too deeply into the obscurity. So number 5, I have to put this on here because I was obsessed with this record when it came out, was At the Gates, Slaughter of the Soul in 1995. Sorry, everybody. But I'm being honest, man. I thought it was like the Rain and Blood of the 90's, man, to be honest with you guys.
The thing is, though, there are so many iconic records from that time. Like, I was also thinking this as I was putting the list together. It's like, are people going to look at this list and they're going to go, Jesus Christ, could you not think of anything that's, a little deeper or a little more, a little more for the connoisseur than the names you've talking about. I mean, let's be honest. Firstly, there weren't as many bands around at that time. Secondly, there were so many iconic albums coming out at that time. How do you ignore them just because you don't want to? Just because you want to look necro or you want to look particularly cult,
right? It's hard to ignore the marquee bands of it. You can't. Yeah. With death metal, you kind of can't do that almost with death metal because there's too much good shit. Like, you know.
But specifically with this record, I feel like, I mean, I saw, this is the tour with Morbid Angel when I saw them. You remember that one? And like, that was my first exposure to them. And I'd never heard anything like this before. Like, really, you know. And shortly after that, everyone was talking about this record. It's like people from every scene was into this record. I don't know if you could back that up, Mike. It's like if you're into metal, if you're into hardcore, if you're into, I mean, they spawned a whole mostly forgettable genre of hardcore bands. You know?
Yeah, it did.
And this record specifically, because this is the standout record in their entire catalog, if you ask me.
In '94, I was doing college radio, and I got the Terminal Spirit Disease CD to play, and I dug it. I fucking loved Terminal Spirit Disease. It's like one of my favorites, and I liked it so much. I wrote to the address on the back, which was the drummer's address, Daniel. And we corresponded 3 times, actually. And he had let me know that they signed the Earache. And in 1995, I interned at Earache. And I remember hearing in the office Slaughter the Soul before it came out. And I was like, holy shit, like, this is even better than Terminal Spirit Disease. This is fucking awesome. Yeah, like you, Mike, 96, they came with, it was Dissection at the Gates and Morbid. And then like the hardcore scene found them, like after that tour, and it was all over.
Yeah, and it was
sorry, Mike, you're going to say?
Oh, no, I was just saying everything about it. I mean, I would just listen to this record and just like everything is so impeccable about it. The writing, the playing, like everything about the record. and I was, you know, I'd already been into black metal, so you know, the characteristic of Tomas's vocals too were like more, I mean, I went back after this record, I went back and I, you know, examined their entire, you know, the stuff they had out prior to that too. And it was just such a meaningful record in a lot of ways, like to me specifically, and everyone around me at that time was like obsessed with this album. So like, it would be disingenuous if I left it off. So, you know, I know it's like an iconic like record for everybody.
Yeah, I will say I've got one thing where I differ from you. I liked the album when it came out. I actually did prefer Terminal Spirit Disease. It was the record that I discovered them on. But I think they have really come into their own post-reunion. I love At War with Reality that came out in 2014. I think it's fucking fantastic. And then I think To Drink from the Night itself, I think, is excellent as well. I even enjoy The Nightmare of Being, which I think a lot of people found quite difficult because it's very, you know, there's some really experimental avant-garde almost stuff added to that record. But I think it's cool. But for me, At War with Reality and To Drink from the Night itself is like a refinement of what they set out to do. I will say one person, you've mentioned him, that I have a tremendous amount of love for is Thomas Lindberg. I think his vocals are incredible. You know, he's been in so many great bands as well. The work he's done in Lockup is, you know, sensational. His side project, The Great Deceiver, is also absolutely fucking fantastic.
Yeah, definitely.
Really, really good. I saw The Great Deceiver open for Napalm Death the very first time that I saw Napalm Death. And man, what a fucking show they put on. I really like The Lurking Fear, another band that he's in as well. So yeah, I've got a huge amount of time for him.
Yeah, The Crown. He was in The Crown for a while.
Yeah,
I mean, you know, all the, you know, Dysphere, like all these kind of like Scandinavian.
Dysphere shit is awesome.
Oh, yeah, Dysphere is the fucking shit.
Love that.
He's like the hardest working vocalist in Scandinavia, if you ask me.
Yeah. All right, Scondotto.
I was gonna say, when they first came back after the 07 reunion tour, I think that was called the Suicidal Final Tour. Then they came back in 2014. They played Maryland Death Fest, and I went, and I knew they were doing a signing, and I brought all my CD sleeves. So I have the original 5 guys sign my At the Gate CD sleeves. So that's pretty cool.
That's awesome. All right, you're number 5.
It's my turn. Mm-hmm. Okay. This is a record from one of my all-time favorite death metal bands, full stop. And it's my favorite record from them. And it is Dismember's Indecent and Obscene, released on June 24th, 1993, Nuclear Blast Records. Yeah, everybody jerks off over the debut. I like Indecent and Obscene more than I like Everflowing Stream. I'm one of those guys. I think it's because I heard Indecent and Obscene first. and I was doing college radio, and it was literally the greatest time in the world to be doing college radio, because death metal was on fire, and every death metal label sent me CDs every fucking week. And in May of '93, Confusion opened for Dismember and Deicide at Lemoore. And I had not heard Dismember yet. I knew the name. I hadn't heard the band yet. They were on Nuclear Blast, and Relapse was licensing the Nuclear Blast. Like, if you look at the back of the CD, it says Nuclear Blast Relapse, and it has like the USA address or whatever on it. This was before like they split. And I just remember looking at the cover. It's got like the chest cavity open and the blood and the heart and the Dismembered chrome logo. And I'm just like, oh yeah, this is going to be good. And I put it on, and I was just like, holy fuck. Every song on this record has like a mosh breakdown bonanza. And just the vocals, and it has like a vibe, this record. It's like a kill everyone vibe. That's kind of on the first record, don't get me wrong. But I think they break away from any entombedisms, maybe, I think, on this, and they kind of become their own kind of like monster on LP number 2. And again, every song on this record and the closing track on this record, oh my God. I gush over this record. I wrote a whole article about this record on No Echo years ago that I could share with you guys and or with the listeners.
Oh yeah, no, definitely said that.
Yeah, it made a huge impact on me. And seeing them live back then, I mean, all those guys are around my age, and I was 19 at the time, and they were all literally around that age too. And they were all, they didn't speak a lot of English, and I was just kind of blown the fuck away by them. And it kind of informed me with Confusion. I don't know, just that whole kind of vibe that Dismember brings. And if you're a fan of the band, I think you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. I got exposed to this record through the Nuclear Blast compilation, Death is Just the Beginning 3. I remember they had the music videos for Skin Father and Dreaming in Red on that. And at the time, it was slightly overshadowed for me by Sinister. They had the Leviathan video on there, and that to me was like, that was where it was at. Everything else was an afterthought in comparison to that. But going back to this record, a couple of years later, I really, really like it. And I totally agree with you on comparisons to the first album. I think they shed a lot of their baby fat from the first record when they did this album. It sounds much more like Dismember rather than a band called Dismember, kind of doing their own thing, but really drawing heavily from other influences. This was a much more assured record than
the guitar harmonies, like this. Just, I don't know, just put this record on and there's not a bad song on it, and there's breakdown after breakdown and just catchy riff after catchy riff. It's a epitome death metal record for me.
Yeah, I got into this record when I lived in Boston those few years, and I was working at the Newberry Comics warehouse, and just like one of many scumbags in a band that needed a job they couldn't get fired from when they went on tour. So I worked there. And I was just buying every record that came out on Earache, basically, or any kind of related thing that I read about that was like vaguely death metal or extreme. And I'm like, oh, Dismember, man, it sounds like this band's like, the name is killer. Look at this album cover. So I just started buying their records, and I was like, yeah, it's just like fucking right up my alley, man.
All right, number 5 for me, Obituary, Cause of Death. This started off much higher on my list, but basically everything from now on was actually pretty much this whole list. I mean, it's fractions of a point between them if we had to, give them ratings out of 10. But this, for me, it wasn't my first taste of Obituary. That was the Incomplete, which I really, really loved. But when I got this album, and it is from start to finish, they could peel off these songs, and often still do when they play live, and it just gets an entire room moving. You understand why. Body Bag, genius. Chopped in Half, absolute fucking genius. Dying, one of my favorite songs that they do live and on record. Find the Arise, amazing. And then they finish off with like a 2-punch combo that is maybe one of the strongest finishes of any death metal record ever recorded. Memories Remain and Turned Inside Out. Turned Inside Out had that real classic like obituary end groove, because they seem to love to do that. Like a song like Kill for Me on World Demise has it as well. It's like, you know, it's just this like real like mid-tempo galloping groove, and you know, John is just laying the vocals in. I just love it. It's like high testosterone Neanderthal death metal. You know, it's just like if you're at the gym, if you're in the car, even if you just want to chill out with some beers, talk shit to your bros, Obituary is the band, and Cause of Death for me. I'm again much more lenient with their catalog than a lot of people that I know. I even like Back from the Dead, but this is the Obituary album for me.
It's an extremely important record for me that I will get to later on in the program.
This is going to be fun.
I was wondering when we're going to have the first bit of overlap.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, a few years ago, we played an Obituary at that Decibel, one of those beer fests that they had in Philly, and they played this album, and it was incredible, man. It just like no blast beats, you know, just double kick, you know, breakdowns, really cool, very unique, and obviously my love of Celtic Frost has led me to my appreciation of Obituary too. Absolutely.
I've seen them about 4 or 5 times, and the one of the times I saw them, they opened with Dying, and that was again one of like, it was almost Biohazard levels of craziness when that riff started and that audience just popped off, you know. Then John comes in and he's doing the dying slow, and you know, people just they just lost it. But yeah, what a masterpiece record.
You guys ever see that video of them playing in the Marquee Club on YouTube in UK in like 90 or 91 supporting this record?
No.
I haven't seen it, no.
It's insane. Every 5 seconds, someone is jumping off the stage. The band looks amazing. The band sounds amazing. Yeah, I got to send it to you. It's one of the coolest death metal clips you'll ever see. It's all moshing, stage dives, the entire set. The band is like on fire. It's just a really cool clip.
Yeah. Mike Hill, what
number
is
4?
Your number 4?
All right, so now I'm going, you know, getting my cred here, you know, for not being like a basic pumpkin spice death metal fan. We're going Ripping Corpse, Dreaming with the Dead from 1991.
What a record.
Yeah. Now that's like, in the Northeast, that's like one of the most important bands in the area, right, Mike? You'll agree.
Oh, yeah.
Most like extreme music fans will reference this record just because of the people that were in it. Of course, we have the great Eric Latan. You know, we got Sean Kelly, who went on to be in Dimmock, another regional band that's really, you know, influential around here, and Brandon Thomas, who played in many bands, as well as, you know, he was in Sub-Zero for a while, like, you know, incredible drummer. And this record, and it's, I consider this record and also some of the catalog of Human Remains, which did not quite make it on this list, to be some of the most important 90s death metal out of the Northeast. And, you know, obviously Eric Rutan has gone on to great things. He's currently in Cannibal Corpse. You know, he was in Morbid Angel. You know, he was, you know, incredible producer and just like an all-around guy who adds like so much to everything he does, you know. And yeah, Ripping Corpse. I remember the guy who I do that Begotten Sons project. He's from New Jersey, and he turned me on to this band. And I was like, back in the 90s, I discovered this thing, and I was like, man, this is like some out there, like completely unique sounding music, and it's, you know, something I carried with me like all these years.
I think you could make an argument to say that Eric Rutan, if there was like a list of the most important people ever in extreme music, period, he almost certainly makes a list of the top 5.
He's a Dan Swano in that way. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%. His influence on production, his influence on not just in playing in the bands that he's played in, his actual influence on the way people play. Because he's got a very, very, very unique style, and you can hear over the years how many people have I wouldn't say try to imitate, but certainly have been inspired by him. I've only met him once, and I thought he was just one of the nicest guys I've ever met. Just a stand-up dude who makes you even more of a fan of him from having met him than you were, prior to shaking his hand.
I've spent a lot of time with Eric Rutan, and he's been a huge impact on even just the way I rehearse guitar, honestly. And we recorded 2 records with him, and just like his oversight on your performances has led me to reevaluate everything about guitar playing ever since I met that guy like years ago. So yeah, he's like a pivotal person in my development as a musician too, for sure.
Also, as a side note, and not to say anything redundant, but what a impact he has had on Cannibal Corpse. Talk about a guy who has injected fresh life into a band. I mean, that is, it's not, you absolutely can't understate that. My introduction to Ripping Corpse actually was from a 1993 interview that David Vincent did with Vanessa Warwick. And it was right around the time that Richard Brunel left the band. And, he said, we've actually replaced him with Eric Rutan of the band Ripping Corpse. And I was like, oh, fuck, I need to check out this Ripping Corpse band. And that's how I discovered Dreaming with the Dead. But yeah, fantastic choice.
Quick funny story. I got to see them back in the early 90s, at Lemoore. Always thought they were awesome. And I had the Dreaming with the Dead original CD. And Vinny, the drummer from Marauder, asked me, "Oh, do you have that CD? Can I borrow it?" And I loaned it to him, and I never saw the CD.
Thanks
a lot, Vinny. Yeah,
that's happened to so many of my records too, man. Believe me. Yeah,
he loved that goddamn CD. Nope, never saw it ever again. Thanks a lot.
All right, Scondotto, number 4.
Okay, here we go. I mean, look, from here on in, it's marquee because it's my favorite, and it is what it is, but it's all good. Cannibal Corpse, Tomb of the Mutilated, released September 22nd, 1992, Metal Blade Records. The Birth of Filth. Let's be honest. This is a filthy, dark, depraved death metal record that I think is super important. And it's a record that I think a lot of bands, looking at you on Death, really are influenced by.
Yeah,
big time right now, 30 plus years later. I mean, it kicks off with fucking Hammer Smashed Face, a song that defined the band, that they play every single show ever since. It has a vibe of just like death metal for serial killers. The samples, the song titles, it is, to me, it's like leaps and bounds from Butchered at Birth. You have the debut. There is some of the thrash metal still in the band on Eaten Back to Life. 100%, it's there. Butchered at Birth, there's no more thrash metal, but I think they're finding their way via death metal. It's very dark. Don't get me wrong. It's great. But Tomb of the Mutilated puts them on the fucking map. And the upward trajectory from that record on, obviously, to me, made them the kings of death metal, as what they are. In December of 92, while they were, promoting this record, Confusion got to play with them at Lemoore. And it was my second time seeing them. I saw them for the first time that summer on the Complete Control tour with Agnostic Front, Obituary, and Malevolent Creation. So, I was already a fan, but getting Tomb of the Mutilated, the CD, and just putting that on, it was so different from Morbid Angel and Deicide and Obituary and Entombed. Cannibal was their own upstate New York filth. And I keep using that word because this record is a serious record. And to me, look, the Bleeding, a lot of people say the Bleeding. Bleeding is like my number 2. My number 1 is Tomb of the Mutilated.
It was always very interesting for me the direction they took with the Bleeding after Tomb of the Mutilated. And again, I discovered them with the Bleeding. I was probably a little bit young still for Cannibal Corpse when Tomb of the Mutilated came out. Mm-hmm. I then got Tomb of the Mutilated, and it was a little jarring at first, like going back to that and knowing there was the record that had come out prior, and it was so much heavier than the Bleeding. I mean, the Bleeding is a much more, by Cannibal Corpse standards, a much more accessible record.
It's more catchy. It's a little more riff centric, maybe.
Song
The
orientated is
amazing.
how I would describe it.
But something about Tomb of the Mutilated. What do you think, Mike Hill?
Oh, I mean, I didn't get into them until the bleeding, really, and then like I was always aware of them, just because of the artwork and my love of horror and comic books and all that sort of stuff, and I thought this is superior, Tomb of the Mutilated being superior to the bleeding when I started retroactively going back into their catalog. You know what I mean? And yeah, it's got all the bangers on it. Like it's got all the tracks that when you go see them now, they play. Like there's the ones that have stood the test of time. Then that you'll see these, and you'll see them perform these tracks. So yeah, it's like probably one of my, I would say definitely one of my top 5 favorite Cannibal records. Definitely, like on the higher end of that too, because I actually quite like their more recent stuff a lot too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, my favorite Fisher record is probably Gallery of Suicide. That's my favorite.
That's a very interesting choice. Because it's not a record that was widely embraced when it came out. I wouldn't even say it's a record that's widely embraced now.
I love it.
Yeah, I am also very partial to the George Fisher era. I am torn in terms of my favorite one of his records, whether it would be the Wretched Spawn or Bloodthirst. Bloodthirst. Bloodthirst, but no, the Wretched Spawn, I'd say, is probably the one I'd land on. I fucking love that record. I'd actually go as far as to say that's probably my favorite Cannibal Corpse record.
See, it's an interesting thing happening here because Jackie, you are younger than us, so you came in the door. You came in the door later, and you have a different take on death metal. So this is good. I like it.
Yeah.
I think George Fisher is just like a superior vocalist in general. Honestly.
I agree.
Yeah.
I 1000% agree. All right, so my number 4. If you paid attention, you would have seen the massive grin I had on my face when Mike Hill was talking about Napalm Death, because I knew he could get the initial bit of controversy out of the way. Because my number 4 is Napalm Death, Fear, Emptiness, Despair. A masterpiece, a fucking absolute masterpiece, an adventurous record, an experimental album, an album that is extraordinarily aggressive. I think it also happens to feature one of my favorite drum performances of all time, Danny Herrera. I mean, literally committing first-degree assault on a drum kit. I mean, he like, when he does fills on that record, it sounds like he's beating the fucking snare drum like it owes him money. It also used to be the CD that I would take with me, or one of the CDs that I would take with me to school dances and parties. Convince the DJ that it was. I would get like some dance mega mix bullshit compilation, put the CD in it, convince the guy that it's it's just some normal thing, and then I would get them to play either Plague Rages or Hung, and carnage would ensue. But what an album! Everything about this record, from the album cover to every single performance to every single riff, I can't get enough of it. It's pure perfection. It is a top-notch record.
Plague Rages, love that song.
Oh God.
Great song.
They were a band that was so willing to, do different things with rhythm, do different things with industrial influences, with that discordant, Killing Joke, almost kind of post-punk kind of thing. And again, I truly believe that's part of why they remain great to this day, because Shane Embry's love of music, his genuine love of such a wide variety of music, always comes out in what he does. Masterpiece record.
There's mod controversy in that record because number 1, they changed the logo.
Yeah.
And number 2, it is a Columbia earache record.
Yeah, I remember that. It was part of the triunity, because it was Carcass Heartwork. It was this one. What was the other band that they put out?
Well, there's Godflesh and Cathedral. Carcass, Godflesh, Cathedral, and Napalm. All went, Earache felt that these 4 bands could reach the next level, yada, yada, yada. Didn't really happen, but they made great records in that era, so that's all that counts.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. Mike Hill, your number 3.
My number 3, Obituary, Cause of Death from 1990. I mean, you can't say enough good things about this record, man. And it's like I said, just that the caveman Neanderthal, like knuckle dragging vibe on this record. And this is the kind of like record that like before you rob a 7-Eleven or something like that, you know, like you're in the car.
That's in the back. Yes, that's on.
That's playing in the background. And then you're like, oh, let's go. And then you run in there, kick the door, and then rob a 7-Eleven and listen to this record. You know what I mean? That's how I've always felt about this particular Obituary album.
You have a couple of sayings, by the way, that I find so fucking funny. When you use the phrase low life, I was listening to Necromaniacs at the gym one day, and I was busy benching. I started laughing so much at the way you would use the phrase and the context of it. I think it's when you guys did the Wicker Man review on Necromaniacs. I actually had to rack up for about a minute or two and just like compose myself. I was fucking sobbing with laughter.
Yeah. I know quite a bit about the low life, so.
Michael Scondotto, your number 3.
Okay, one of the big guns. Deicide, self-titled, released June 25th, 1990 on Road Racer Records. Yeah, this is like a nuclear bomb for 17-year-old Mikey. This, you know, I heard this record first, you know. I remember I was like such a Satanist back then. I used to go, I had this job where I did like stock work, like, you know, stock boy, quote unquote, and for like housewares. And there was like this warehouse upstairs that had like graffiti all over it, whatever, people writing on the walls. And I remember I just took like a red marker and I just did like a big Deicide with like a pentagram. And then I shook the red marker to have blood all over it. Like I was so into Deicide. Like looking back, it's hilarious, but I was so into this fucking band. And another band that just really just kind of sonically, musically shaped me, because surprise, surprise, got to play with them twice in their prime, and it was just like an event, you know, for me and for Confusion, and it was just like we just loved them, you know, we were super fans, and I almost went with Legion actually, because when I go track for track sometimes, I actually go with, I'm like, maybe Legion is actually better track for track. But both of them kind of have no bad tracks, in my opinion, both the self-titled and Legion. But for the impact, I went with the debut.
They are both incredibly confrontational records, which is, I think, part of the appeal and part of why people gravitated towards them so much. You know, and Legion does have some absolutely fantastic songs on. I mean, like, and real peaks, you know, In Hell I Burn, Repent to Die, you know, fantastic tunes. But yeah, I'll talk a little later potentially about Deicide. But
well, but yeah, I mean, look, the guitar attack of Deicide, even first 4 records, first 2 maybe in particular. No death metal band. I've never really heard that playing before. Like this whole, like, it's just very hard to describe. It's just like this down pick attack that focuses on just like impact and just like a riff that kind of stays in your head. They were very good at that. Really, really good at that, you know? And that's kind of like, to me, their strong point, you know? Very different from all their peers in that respect.
Yeah, I mean, everything about Deicide's over the top, man. You know, like the guitar playing, the Hoffman brothers, you know, Glenn Benton, everything. It's like the band is like watching Road Warrior or something like that. You know what I mean? It's like, you know what I mean? It's just like this over the top, like steroid induced, violence fest, you know?
And guys, even visually back then, look at all the press photos from the first, say 3 or 4 records. Like they had the best album cover photos. They had the best press photos. I have a few in my collection. I'm like Deicide fanboy. And the aesthetic they had, everything was just fucking like perfect for me for that initial run, you know?
Well, like I said, I'll reserve some comments about that too for later on.
Okay,
my number 3, Symbolic by Death. And I could have chosen any single Death record that came out in the 90s. I was slithering on Inhuman for a period of time. Then I thought of Sound of Perseverance. But Symbolic to me is the album that I like going back to most. A probably slightly more progressive side to Death, you know, than they had shown previously. very riff heavy, again, very, very catchy, but incredibly well crafted, well constructed songs, starting with the opening track, which is, I mean, as soon as that riff kicks in, you just know you're about to embark on a very epic and, very memorable journey. But I mean, I'm such a massive fan of Chuck Schuldiner. It was a real tragedy that he went when he did. But with the legacy that he left behind, I think if anyone's going to remember him for anything, it's going to be this record. I mean, again, this record from start to finish, just phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. Album cover is beautiful as well. And there was genuinely there was a real beauty to a lot of the stuff that Death did, especially on those last two records. There's like moments of genuine emotion. When we talk about Deicide's appeal is that it's just angry, hateful shit from beginning to end. There's no relent. But with Death, he could kind of change gears from being, super intense and aggressive to being, really quite soulful in his own way without needing to resort to clean vocals or anything like that. It's a band and a record that is very, very special to me.
Man, you are going to hate me, Jackie. I've been trying to like Symbolic since 1995.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I never liked this record. I feel like it's like a prog metal record with a death metal vocal. And I feel that way about the last two death records. I feel like Chuck hates death metal on Symbolic and Sound Perseverance, which apparently I heard he did, actually. I heard he was kind of just done with all this because he was way into progressive metal and prog and just kind of over it. And that's why you see that the Death logo makes all these little changes with, because it's just not his thing anymore. I don't know. Should I give this another try? I'm not even joking when I say
certainly should
I've been trying to like this record for 25, 30 years.
Yeah. Oh, look, I mean, I remember doing my top 50 favorite death metal bands, and Death was pretty high up. And I can't remember who I had on the podcast that I was talking to it about, but I remember the guest also saying that they didn't really care for Death as a band very, very much. So I get that those last two records might not be to everybody's taste, and also one interesting point that you raised maybe about what Chuck's feelings were about death metal at the time. He did have that project Control Denied that he tried to get off the ground that never really kind of went anywhere. They did have the one record, Fragile Art of Existence, but it wasn't it was never it was never going to be a replacement for Death, even though I think potentially he may even have wanted it to be. But that being, I mean, regardless of where the man's head was at, he turned out two fucking sensational records in my view.
I'm actually a very big Death fan. I just have like a kind of a jump off point of individual thought patterns. Death are one of my favorite death metal bands. Don't get me wrong. But
to me, this is a substantially better record than Individual Thought Patterns. I like Individual Thought Patterns, but it's a more fully realized vision. I think there's also more kind of cohesiveness across the album. Like songs like Empty Words going into A Thousand Eyes, and then Crystal Mountain. There's like a theme running through this record. It's a very, like if you listen to a record like Master of Puppets or Ride the Lightning, like the all-time greats, there's like a feeling to that, a specific feeling that is unique to that record, and Death to me has that. It is in that echelon as far as I'm concerned. So I would suggest give it another try. You may not be convinced, and I certainly understand that. I mean, obviously, I'll never speak to you again, but you're out of the Horsemen as well, and it is blood in, blood out. So we're gonna have to talk about that. So, but no, it's I love it. Mike Hill, any thoughts on that record?
Yeah, I mean, being a guitar player, I appreciate the progressive stuff that Chuck did in these records. But I always veer more towards the earlier material, and Death as a band, as a death metal band, they just fall a little bit outside of the realm of the stuff that are my go-to bands. You know what I mean? I've never been the biggest Death fan, and I know that people are probably going to attack me for that, but whatever. Sorry.
Yeah.
All right, your number two.
Okay. My number two. Oh, sorry. Is it my turn? Or
it is, yeah.
Okay, all right, great. Sorry about that. I'm going to get attacked for this one because it's another generic record.
AC/DC, blow up your
yeah, it's like Entombed Wolverine Blues from 1993, man. Sorry, but it's a fucking
Wolverine
great album.
Blues. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm about to say that's a bold choice for number 2.
I don't get you. I cannot. I have always listened to this record, and I got to be honest, man. This is like something this is probably one of my most listened to record by Entombed, because I think their strength is this type of material, and like I said, man, I'm just being honest here. There's I'm not trying to be like it's cult or whatever, but this record, I got to give it respect, man. All the tracks that I love by Entombed are on this album. I Master, Demon, Hollow Man. So there you go.
I think that the title track is absolutely fucking brilliant. Hollow Man is awesome. Demon, I agree with you. Great. Full of Hell, great. Out of Hand, awesome. This was the record that I discovered Entombed on, although my favorite Entombed album and what it was a short list for this list potentially is Clandestine. I think it's got a little bit more severity than Wolverine Blues, but it does have some of those melodies and those hooks that Wolverine Blues had. They were already starting to show kind of their knack for writing songs like that, really memorable stuff. Like if you listen to a song like Evelyn or Blessed Be on Clandestine, I mean that is a high level songwriting, particularly in the scene, particularly at the time.
Yeah, Clandestine is also a mosh bonanza. Also,
yeah,
yes,
bonanza. Entombed, absolutely love them. Got into them on Left Hand Path. Left Hand Path is my number 1. Clandestine's 2. This is my number 3. I love Wolverine Blues, but it's definitely my 3rd favorite. Full stop. Even though I actually did enjoy the hell out of the record, honestly. Important band. Big in my exposure to death metal. It was January of '91. I bought this cassette that was supposed to be for free. It was an earache cassette sampler. This record store Zigzag would sell the promos. It was a promo, and it had 3 songs from Entombed, 3 songs from Morbid, 3 songs from Napalm, 3 songs from etc. And it was like, yeah, okay, I'm in. But, LG Petrov, rest in peace. I'm very glad I got to see Entombed many times. One of the absolute best was the first time. It was them, Incantation, and Immolation. It was 3 ridiculously great bands.
I was just about to say, what a lineup.
In May of '92, right before that big, Dismember Deicide show. It was the same month at Lemoore. So that's like how great shit was in the early '90s. If you lived in a major city and every band came to town, I blessed for that. But yeah, good pick, Mike Hill. A little offbeat, but a good pick.
You know me, man. I was invite attacks and controversy and all that sort of stuff. So
Yeah.
All right, Scondotto, your number 2.
Okay, my number 2. The band isn't controversial. But picking this particular record might be a bit of an eyebrow raiser. But again, it is my favorite from this band. And it is Morbid Angel's Blessed Are the Sick. May 2nd, 1991. It is my favorite Morbid Angel record. How about that? Heard Altars first. That's how I got into them. But I bought this record. It hits America late 91. Back in the day, records took a little while, even the earache records, and it took a little while for them to come out in America, or if they had an American distributor or got reissued in America. Like a lot of the earache stuff in particular, Heartwork is 93 in Europe, but it came out in America in the spring of 94. So that's like a 94 record for me. But Blessed Are the Sick, man, again, just, I don't know, man, a vibe, and every song is a fucking monster. Yeah, the recording, blah, blah, blah. It's a little thin. It's no Covenant. It's no Domination. And the Altars recording is probably better than the Blessed Are the Sick recording. But the songs are there. There is no wasted songs, in my opinion, on this record. I even love the little musical interludes on this record. Like the piano one. Oh, my God. This just vibe and atmosphere. I'm very big on vibe and atmosphere, and I know you are too, Mike. And Blessed Are the Sick is just like, you just want to fucking punch somebody in the face to this record. I don't know. That's the vibe I always got from Blessed Are the Sick. It's a tough, angry record. Dave's voice is fucking sick. He's got like almost like 2 or 3 vocal styles on this record. I mean, top of his fucking game. And Brunel is it's the last Brunel record. It's a special record for me. So Blessed Are the Sick is my number 2.
I'm very much with you on vibe. For me as well, the best records have a feel to them. You know, there's an atmosphere that's exclusive to that record, and I totally agree with you. It's certainly on this album that is the case. Yeah, every single song magnificent. Abominations, fucking fantastic. Unholy Blasphemies. One of the things that I loved so much about this album is I'm a big fan of like little elements, like little touches that just help elevate like a particular part of a song or a particular song. Unholy Blasphemies, just like that slight effect that he has on his voice on the last, I think it's the last verse, that like makes his voice sound like it's sort of coming into the verse. It just makes it sound that much more evil. Abominations, a song that's so catchy and so well written. Fall from Grace, same deal.
That's
the
one of my
title track,
favorites.
same deal. It's definitely for me. Musically, this is such a leap forward from Altars of Madness. I mean, I know a lot of folks will listen to this and go, how dare you say that Altars of Madness is the best? I mean, Altars of Madness made the biggest impact, perhaps, but Blessed Are the Sick from a songwriting perspective, and even I would argue some proto black metal elements that were thrown in there.
Yes.
It's personally for me a much more important record, and it's a much more impressive record today. If I played Altars of Madness and I played Blessed Are the Sick back to back, it would be for me this would be a much more impressive album. If I didn't know the band before.
About them, okay, you have Death and Possessed, right? The 1 and 2s, you know what I'm saying, of death metal. Well, I placed Morbid Angels as number 3, as the pillars of the genre. And they're a band that I like more than Death and Possessed. Morbid Angel. I feel like Morbid Angel came out of the gate as Morbid Angel. There's no thrash Morbid. There's no you know what I'm saying. There's no lighter element. There's no clunky. Death's first record is clunky, a little sloppy and messy. Morbid Angel comes out as fucking Morbid Angel. Like you hear the demos. And it's like they're playing this in 1985, like 86. Like thrash metal is like king, and Morbid Angel is busting out like fucking grade A, way ahead of its time death metal. And that's something you really need to keep in mind about them. Go back and listen to the pre-Altars of Madness stuff. It is insane. It is way like you're just really going to be surprised that this genre was being played in 85 and 86, like to this caliber.
I would also say, just as a final comment on David Vincent, I mean, like that, this to me is peak Vincent in terms of vocal performance. Again, he masters something that to me is so incredibly important about a death metal vocalist, and that is the ability to manage rhythm and to have your voice almost kind of be part of the hook. You take a song like The Ancient Ones, the chorus, come forth, Ancient Ones, Tiamat, Cthulhu. It's like he's got this like real pulse to what he's doing when he's singing. And it, again, takes a song that's already great and just like shoots it into the stratosphere.
I'm going to put a pin in this discussion about this record for the next round. So for me, at least.
I am going to continue the Morbid Angel love and say that my favorite Morbid Angel record, and my number 2, Morbid Angel, Formulas Fatal to the Flesh. Now let me kind of throw this out there. David Vincent was my fucking hero. So like when I heard he was leaving Morbid Angel, I was devastated. I was fucking pissed. Like he was like, I remember seeing interviews with him and just thinking he's like the ultimate front man for me at the time. Especially he had this very, very very articulate, very well spoken, very intense dude. He had his vocal style I fucking loved. I mean, Domination I adored. I adored Covenant. I loved Blessed Are the Sick. So I was for me, like the band was basically dead. And then I get Formulas Fatal to the Flesh, and I kind of didn't know what to make of it for at least 6 months. Like I would go and listen to it, and I would just be like, I'm just not getting into this. And just one day, randomly, you know, there's some albums where they kind of sit on the back burner, and it's like one day that everything just clicks into place, and it's like, fuck, how did this not make sense to me before the way it's making sense to me right now? And the day that happened was the day that became my favorite Morbid Angel album, and that has never changed. And I'd say that's probably about 1999 that happened. This album, to me, one is Trey at his absolute peak. I've always loved the spontaneity to Trey's playing. He's like one of those rare guitarists where, like I've always said about guys like him, Dimebag Darrell, Matt Pike, there's some people that sound like they have to work super hard to be able to play, be dexterous, impressive guitar players, musicians. And then there's some people, like a very, very, very rare group of folks that it sounds like they pick a guitar up and music is just coming from them. And Trey on this record sounds like that more than on any other Morbid Angel album. Prayer of Hatred, Nothing Is Not. One of my favorite ever Morbid Angel songs, Invocation of the Continual One, the song that he actually vocals on. You know, such a great way to bookend the record. But I mean, this record is fucking evil. It's brutal. It took any idea that, you know, they were softening on domination and just kind of waxed that aside. Kind of like the difference between Vile and The Bleeding. And I mean, Steve Tucker, you know, I think did a more than a capable job of stepping into David Vincent's shoes, and that was very difficult shoes to fill. I would argue harder than Chris Barnes, because of David's personality and because of the like Mike, you mentioned the way that he's able to do so many different styles, and he's got such a unique voice. So to be able to replace him, and for somebody who, literally, as a 14, 15-year-old Euro worship the guy, except eventually in time that there's a new man, at the mic and he sounds fucking great. I think that's, saying something. And as I said, it's been my favorite Morbid Angel album ever since.
Steve Tucker is a great vocalist and a great front man, but you're going to get mad at me. I have always struggled to embrace his era of Morbid Angel. Could be an age thing, could be whatever, could be a David Vincent fanboy thing, but I've always, I don't know, like it's all good. Like those records are good. I mean, Heretic maybe not so good, but the last one, Kings and Disdain, pretty fucking good. Brutal vocals, heavy death metal. But when they lost David Vincent, they lost, I don't know. It's like they lost Elvis of death metal. Like they lost, I don't know, like they lost, like, regardless of his cornyisms, regardless of his industrial, whatever, regardless of anything, regardless of country, whatever, I don't care. What he did in his time in Morbid Angel can never be contested, can never be changed. And those 4 death metal records are 4 of, to me, the greatest death metal records. And it's so hard to get out of that shadow. And I don't think the Steve Tucker era eclipsed that shadow.
I would agree with you on the era as a whole, because I actually don't like Gateways to Annihilation very much. I think that Heretic has got its moments. I think the last record, Kingdom Sustained, is pretty good. I would say my sentiment, the degree of sentimentality I had for David is very much confined to up to and including Domination, because Illud Divinum fucking garbage is it's unlistenable trash, and I would take I would listen to Gateways to Annihilation before I listen to that. But Portal of the Flesh, I would say, if there's like we're talking about revisiting records here,
I will revisit.
The sooner you revisit that than Symbolic, because this album, when it clicks for you as it has me, and I know I have quite a few friends that kind of feel the same, actually. Massive David Vincent fans, but when this album kind of snapped into focus for them, it is a fucking masterpiece, absolute masterpiece.
What do you think, Hill?
No, I'm down with Formulas. It's not my favorite Tucker record, though. Gateways is actually my favorite Tucker album. I like that 7-string vibe on that record. And I don't know, Mike, do you remember when there was that club way out in Queens, like the Voodoo something or other, the Voodoo Lounge or whatever? They were doing shows out there for a while. When they were on tour with Pantera, there was a one-off night when Morbid Angel played out there. And I went to go check it out, and I saw that all those songs on Gateways performed live. And it was
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so
I remember Voodoo Lounge. Yeah.
Yeah. Someone got stabbed out there, and they stopped doing shows or whatever.
A guy from Incantation, actually.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
It was the Incantation show. Someone got stabbed, so they stopped doing death metal shows out there.
Mm.
But no, Formulus is sick. The drumming on that's incredible, definitely.
But what do you think about? Do you find yourself going home and putting on the Steve Tucker era?
Personally, no. For me, it's all about those first few records, and we'll lead into that.
Okay.
All right, we're going to do honorable mentions, and then we'll get to everybody's number ones.
Okay.
So honorable mention, Michael Hill. You can tear through as many as you want.
All right. I'm just going to go no particular order here. Now I told you guys that Bolt Thrower was initially on a revision of this. So for me, it was War Master, Cannibal Corpse, Bleeding, Suffocation, Effigy of the Forgotten, Deicide Legion. So interesting that you guys could sit. We were talking about that. Immolation, Dawn of Possession. That's another one that was on. That was like from '91 as well. So yeah, that was kind of all of my runner-ups on this effort here.
Sheriff.
Okay. Honorable mentions. I mean, oh god, there's a bunch.
It's hard.
Carcass Necroticism, Death's Human, Autopsy's Mental Funeral, Entombed's Left Hand Path, Immolation, Dawn of Possession, and honestly, I would also throw in War Master as well. It's the first time I heard Bolt Thrower.
Yeah.
This is my top 20. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's top 20. These are all in there for the top 20.
It would frankly be difficult to even do a top 20 of best 90s death metal records. And you know what the interesting thing is? The three of us were far more simpatico as far as black metal was concerned than we are with death metal, which again I think actually is maybe a testament to the richness of the genre in that decade. But anyway, so my honorable mentions again in no particular order. Broken Hope, Repulsive Conception. There's a reason why the show is called Into the Necrosphere, as song is on there. Also, one of the great joys of my life, Damien, their current vocalist, hopefully forever vocalist, shouting me out and dedicating Swamped and Gore to me when they played London the last time.
I'm a Balance of Repugnance guy. Love it as well,
yeah. Suffocation, Pierced from Within. Phenomenal album. Nile, Amongst the Catacombs of Nephron Car. Dying Fetus, Killing on Adrenaline. I could probably have an entire list and it would only be Dying Fetus records. So Immolation, Failures for Gods, Sinister, Diabolical Summoning. It could also very easily have been Sinister, Hate, but Diabolical Summoning is the more consistent of the two. Pestilence, Testimony of the Ancients. I mean, the list could go on, but those are ones I needed to at the very least shout out and make people aware.
In '94, listen to this death metal story. '94 Cannibal Bleeding tour with Sinister and Cynic opening. Okay, Cynic is opening this tour. The Roadrunner debut is out for Cynic, and it is a bomb. It did not do very well. And I actually thought it was good. I liked first Cynic record. It was very different from everything that was going on back then. And I like that song Veil of Maya. And I was like, oh, this is cool. Went to Long Island with some friends because it was like, not the major cities, it was the secondary markets tour, they call it. And man, Cynic you could feel Cynic going over everyone's head, waiting for Sinister and Cannibal Corpse. They got like no reaction at all. I felt like I was one of 5 people that liked Cynic, and it's just something I never forgot. And then Cynic went on to become a cult, huge thing. But it was a hard sell for them to be on a tour with those two bands, if you can imagine that in 1994.
Well, people forget how conservative all scenes used to be in the 80s and the 90s. I'd say until at least the mid 90s, because and you can tell from the interviews that the bands were doing at the time. There's that interview that I love quoting with Alex Webster where he's like, this was 1992. I think they were touring for Butchered at Birth. He's like, the goal of the death metal band is to get heavier and faster. Never fucking wimping, man. Never wimping out. And it was like, I mean, and there was this real like. And any band that dared to bring an acoustic guitar or anything like that into the mix is false. which blows you away as to how Morbid Angel got it right with Blessed Are the Sick, and a record that arguably made them even more popular. But they were one of the few, I mean, maybe even the only band that could get away with doing that sort of thing. If you tried, coloring outside the lines, if you're in a thrash band, shit. If you tried coloring outside the lines, if you're a death metal band, people didn't accept you. If you tried doing something a little different in black metal, ditto. People thought you were trash. Black metal got a little bit more accepting towards the end of the 90s, but I mean, there was until 1995, 1996. I mean, Fear Emptiness Despair was seen as a sellout record.
Yes.
There is nothing that's fucking selling out about that album. It is a violent, relentless record. All right, number ones, Mike Hill.
So my number one is Blessed Are the Sick by Morbid Angel. And I mean, not for nothing, this record kind of defined my whole approach to making extreme music in a lot of ways because of some of the topics we talked about earlier, where I always looked at Trey as like almost like the Greg Ginn of death metal. Greg Ginn and Black Flag had a very, very distinct vision for the band, and he was pulling in all these different elements into their music, especially in the later era of Black Flag. And like Morbid Angel in general, to me, were like the Black Flag of death metal. They just they created their own thing. Like you talk about coloring outside of the lines. They didn't have any lines. They just were pure creative expression. And this record in particular, with all the atmosphere and the incredible playing on it. Yes, I acknowledge that the production might be a little thin, but like that opening riff, man, in in Fall from Grace, like it's so evil, man, and then the song just goes to a completely different like place, and that entire record. And once again, Dave Vincent, like huge influence,
Those are some of my favorite lyrics of all time. Is those opening lyrics on Fall from Grace? The hot winds burning me, burning as I fall, cast away, speechless in a holy way. Fucking
dude, that whole
genius.
Like that whole Paradise Lost, Milton trip. Like in my living room, I have like this gigantic painting of, the Fall from Grace. Like that's always been like a huge thing that resonated with me, like creatively and like, and that song kind of like the lyrics of that song really resonate with me and it hit home in a lot of ways. So yeah.
Oh, superb choice. Right. Michael Scondotto.
All right. This is the first death metal band I became a big fan of, the first death metal record I ever bought. And it is Obituary's Cause of Death. It's my number one. It's always kind of been my number one, actually, for a long time, because you never forget your first. I've been told about Obituary by a couple of people, Rich Darkside, my friend John Zito, and Saab from Marauder were all kind of raving about them because we were all big horror movie fans, and they knew I was a big horror movie fan. And they were described to me as a band that the singer didn't have any lyrics. He just screamed and said all this crazy shit. And they looked like they're dying. And they took pictures with nooses and in coffins. And everything's about horror movies. And I went, okay, I have to see this band. Yeah. So they were on tour in, I think it was August, I believe, 1990 with Sacred Reich. And it was actually, that was their first U.S. tour, even though they formed in like 85, 86, Executioner as Obituary. They never did a proper tour before. There was no touring on Slowly We Rot, believe it or not. This was their first U.S. tour, opening for Sacred Reich. And I was a Sacred Reich fan. I like hardcore and thrash metal. That's what I like. And seeing Obituary and seeing a death metal band for the first time and hearing what this band was about, they smoked Sacred Reich for me that night, and it was just like I didn't look back. Like death metal and me were born pretty much at that moment, officially, really. And it's all because of Cause of Death. And then about a week later, I bought the Cause of Death cassette, and yeah, fanboy ever since.
Masterpiece record. All right, to the shock of absolutely no one. So my number one record, the first Deicide album.
Nice.
June 24th, 1990. Deicide was like an urban myth almost in the circles that I grew up in, because you knew that someone somewhere had it was the record that kind of first came along my path was Legion. And it was, I didn't really spend much time listening to it because I didn't know anyone who had it. I knew of people who had it. What you said, Mike, about the press photos and stuff like that. Glenn had this real ominous look to him. He literally looked like a fucking. He looked like a murderer. He looked like somebody who was dangerous, who you didn't want to be around. It's like, and then I've told the story before, but there was a BBC documentary called Dancing with the Devil, which was prescribed to me by my dad. Told me I need to watch it and basically get some sense over this music that I was going into. Sorry, apologies for the racket in the background. She's trying to do some Deicide vocals herself.
Yeah.
Hold on. So he told me check out the I have to watch this documentary, and right at the beginning of the documentary, this guy is talking about how music has gone along, has moved on from Elvis and his thrusting pelvis, to the extreme satanic black metal of Slayer. What did he say? King Diamond, Venom, and Deicide, and then they show Deicide playing an early show when they still had the spikes and the armor and stuff on. And there's this interview with Glenn, and he's talking about, are you possessed? It's like, of course, do you believe, And it was a complete, Glenn having it up. But for me, watching that, it was like, holy fuck, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. They had a clip of Sacrificial Suicide with kind of the the breakdown, but the damn to hell in my life, and then they have the lyrics at the bottom. It's all shocking, and I mean, you hear that, it's like one of the catchiest things ever written. That was just a total gateway into that record, and when I got into that album, I was fucking. I've adored it ever since.
Deicide was dangerous, man. Like,
fuck yes,
yeah. They first came to Brooklyn in '92 with it was them and Demolition Hammer and Cancer, and Marauder opened that show. It was quite a show, and there was such an excitement about it, and it was dangerous. Like they were like a dangerous death metal band, like. With a rep, and like it was dead serious and evil, and them and Morbid Angel, I think, were the two bands that just were like, oh, you like them? You know what I'm saying? And it's like, yeah, it's like the word dangerous is a key word. Like look, it's 2023. Death metal, black metal aren't really dangerous anymore. Everybody knows what it is. Everybody knows who the bands are, and yada yada. But in this time period, it was underground and new and exciting. It was just a really great time.
Well, is there something that you mentioned earlier about the difference in the way that this record is performed? I was thinking about it after you said it. If you go back to something like Demistris Dom Satanas, there's like a recklessness to the playing, and I would say that this record has it as well, much more so than anything else they did. I mean, Once Upon a Cross is a great album as well, but it's quite a tight and controlled record. And I would say, even something like Blessed Are the Sick, also is a very well crafted, carefully crafted record. But there's kind of a spontaneity and a chaos to the playing here. You can hear it in the fact that they kept mistakes on the record. Every single album, every single song, just kind of. I'm trying to think what there's like an anarchic feeling to it. There was also something just about the 90s generally. Like if you were into ECW or even like the WWE, like the Attitude Era, you would watch stuff like that. And the thing that I loved about it, it felt like something could pop off at any moment. This album almost has that same feeling.
Yes.
It's like something fucked up could happen at any second, and that would have been the great thing about. I sadly never got to see those shows, but that was any video I've ever seen. That's the vibe you get from those shows. It's like something fucking horrific could occur at any point.
I would love to hear they probably exist, or they may exist, like the demos of the self-titled and of Legion, or like pre-production or. Because I bet those are savage.
Totally, yeah.
Imagine here, I bet those are really fucking good. They may exist,
And just final, coda to this, death metal vocals. I generally love. I got my thoughts on certain habits and traits I don't like that I've spoken about a lot, but Glenn Benton's vocal performance on this album has never been topped. I have never heard somebody sound so fucking angry, so hateful, and so like convincingly fucking menacing and evil as I have this guy. And he delivers every single line with just, I mean, it's just sheer power. You know, you think about Crucifixation, for example, you know, that last bit where he's yelling, "Where's my crucifix? I can't die without it." I mean, it's like the final stamp on the, on the blood splattered pages of the Bible. It's, love it. Absolutely fucking
I have a funny aside. Ever since hearing this record, anytime I have a procedure in my life or something that requires anesthesia for a test or something, like, without question, on point, the "Go to Sleep, Sleep Forever" sample from Jim Jones pops into my head every time I'm about to go under. Like, because I think about the Deicide record, that sample from the Jim Jones movie, you know, where he says, "Lie down, go to sleep, sleep forever," always pops into my head. Cool.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Well, gentlemen, this was a lot of fun, and we did take way too long to get it done, but I know, you know, we're all super busy. So next round, what say you guys we do? My thoughts were either 80s thrash or 2000s black metal, but I'm open to ideas.
What if we said just thrash metal? Because let's be honest, there are some 1990 bangers. And is 1990 the 80s?
No, but I mean, I thought the 80s because it's like the halcyon era of thrash.
Okay.
I'm happy to do favorite thrash, but yeah, we could do thrash 80s and 90s thrash.
No, but you know what though? You might be right. Because because limiting it makes it kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Because there'll be some mild emissions, but even the emissions won't be so bad. To me, it would be more interesting to see just, you know, Mike and yours 6 in general of 80s thrash. So we can do 80s thrash. Why not? What do you think, Bill?
Can we throw in some crossover records too? Because there's a lot of
for sure
killer like crossover albums coming out in the 80s too. Yeah. No, I'm down. Sounds good to me, man.
All right.
It'll be actually easier to do that than death metal, I think.
Yeah, be interesting to see what we. I am very curious to see what we end up with, though. Like I said, I'm always it's the crossovers that I'm always the most curious about, like where they cross over. Same when we do the end of year countdowns. The other thing I just wanted to mention to you. So I had Katie on last week. One thing that she mentioned to me when we went off air, she said someone who she spoke to at a show had mentioned that he listens to all of our podcasts, and he suggested to her, which she thought was a great idea, that at some point, and obviously it's something that's going to require an extraordinary amount of careful planning, et cetera, but at some point we should do a live podcast together. Like find a bar or something, you know, that has like a small stage, record it, you know, invite people. Katie said she'd even do the promotion for us. But do something like that. That would be fucking amazing.
That would be really cool. Yeah.
I know we've talked about that, Mike. We talked about that for Necromaniacs, actually, trying to do some event somewhere. So yeah, I'm down with that. That'd be awesome.
I think it would be good to just talk about the current state of death and black metal. You know what I'm saying? Like something like that. Like something like, you know, or no topic, whatever. Like, you know, anything.
Yeah, well, let's hold a good thought and mull that idea, because I think that'd be fucking awesome. It'd give me an excuse to come to the States as well, because I think the best place to do it would be somewhere in the US. You know, probably your neck of the woods. I mean, the lion's share of the listeners of Into the Necrosphere are in the States, so you know that's why it would make the most sense for me, I think.
Yeah, no, I'm down. It's somewhere in New York, or that'd be killer. That'd be awesome.
Awesome. All right, gentlemen. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you,
we will speak again very soon, and we will. The Legion will see us when we return for the Thrash Countdown, which we should definitely try and do before the end of the year.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much.
Down. All right, guys.
All right,
have a good day.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.
They'll be here with flamethrowers. Drink. If you seconds, you'll feel drowsy. You'll lie down and go to sleep. Sleep forever.
One of the very best of the best death metal songs, in my opinion, ever released, Carnage in the Temple of the Damned, off my favorite death metal record of the 1990s, nay, all time. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I've spoken about this on the show many times before, there simply was not a better death metal album, or has not been a better death metal album ever released. I don't think there ever will be. Even though the genre is going through, I think, a real resurgence at the moment. But yeah, what a blast catching up with the Mikes Hill and Scondotto. We will be back with another 666 countdown. Thrash metal will be the order of the day in our next installment. And then, of course, who knows what 2024 might bring. I really do like the idea of, booking a small venue, getting a couple of us together and doing something live, talking shit, hopefully interacting with a couple of you. But we will keep you posted on when and where that happens. But yeah, make sure that you check out Everything Went Black and Necromaniacs, as I said at the top of the hour. And then, of course, both of the Mikes' musical concerns. Mike Hill, of course, is in Tombs and Scorpion Throne. Mike Scondotto is in Inhuman, Confusion, and The Last Stand. 3 excellent bands, 5 total. So yeah, make sure that you check those out, and a big thank you to them for coming on the show. Right now, we've got some new music to talk about. Not really new music as much as re-recorded music. Bestial Devastation and Morbid Visions re-recorded, I was about to say re-released, but re-recorded by the brothers Cavalera, Max and Igor. Of course, anyone knows that these albums were first originally released as the first two Sepultura albums. So we had Morbid Visions coming out in 1986. The first Sepultura full-length debut, Bestial Devastation, came out, I think, right before that. And both of them at the time made a very significant impact, but an impact that was later overshadowed by Schizophrenia, Beneath the Remains, and Arise. Three records that very significantly benefited from the addition of Andreas Kisser. Now, we're not going to go into the history of the Sepultura falling out and where we are right now with the Cavalera, Soulfly, Sepultura split, but when it comes to re-recordings, in the main, it very, very rarely works. I can think really off the top of my head of one example where I think it's actually landed, and that was the Testament First Strike Still Deadly compilation. But outside of that, whether it has been Exodus redoing a bunch of their songs. I know the irony of me sitting here with a Paradise Lost icon t-shirt for those of you watching this on YouTube. They're about to do a re-recording of that. But the reason those albums never really work, those re-recordings, is because they captured a certain spirit and a certain point in time that when bands try to recreate that, they just fail dismally for a number of different reasons. Now, I was curious and skeptical at the same time about the Bestial Devastation and Morbid Visions re-recordings. When I did my react to, and I can't even remember which song it was off of Morbid Visions on the news rant, I did say that, a bit of the vibe of the original had been lost in the re-recording. But I have got to say, listening to the end result of these two, I think that Max and Igor have done a tremendous job of not really recapturing the spirit of those, but bringing those two records into the 21st century. Treating the material with a degree of love and affection that really could only have come from, the gentleman that wrote it. I think actually making or helping remind us just how far ahead of their time both of those albums were. If you listen to the original, there are hints of blackened death metal that, we still hear today on those albums. And, there weren't a lot of bands that were playing with that degree of extremity. I remember the original Sepultura bio read something about the Cavalera brothers falling under the spell of Venom. And Venom, as great as they were, almost certainly played a role in what these guys were doing, but they really were forging a path all of their very own. And it is great to hear these songs come out in the way that they've come out on this re-recording, because I think it really underlines what I've just said. Now, I think of the two, Bestial Devastation has the songs that probably benefit from the re-recorded treatment most. On there, you've got The Curse, you've got the title track, you've got Antichrist, you've got Necromancer, you've got Sex Stuff Area 13, which is fucking genius. I just have a real... predilection for Spanish lyrics and for Portuguese lyrics, and so you got them, singing in their native tongue there, and it just sounds hard as fuck. But I think everything from the Eleran Cantor artwork, which on both releases looks absolutely stunning, down to the engineering and the mastering, I just think this is fantastic. The songs have impact. They sound not overly produced, but certainly nowhere near as rough around the edges as the originals. But like I said, the most critical thing here is that the material's been treated with a genuine affection that makes it feel like this wasn't just a cash-in. I'm very curious to see what happens next as far as these re-recordings are concerned, whether or not they will try and redo Arise and Beneath the Remains. Wouldn't surprise me. Do those albums need to be re-recorded? I'd maybe be less excited about that. But that being said, if they can do it in the same way that they've done these two releases, I'm certainly not against it. I'm going to play one of my favorite songs off of the re-released duo right now. This is Necromancer. I think you will all agree that in spite of our collective misgivings, the brothers Cavalera have definitely done it. That was Necromancer off the re-recorded Bestial Devastation EP. If you want to check out either of the records, they're available right now on Nuclear Blast. And as always, I will post a link to their Bandcamp in the description to the podcast. So if you do buy yourself any music from there, let them know that it was old Jackson at Into the Necrosphere that sent you. Right now, my friends, if you still mask up to protect yourself from COVID while you're sat alone in your car, then it's time for you to get to stepping, because this is my weekly news rant.
A roundabout for judgment. And hang them where the world can see.
All right, my friends, as always, we begin the journey on Metal Storm. This week, the first headline that is grabbing my attention is Brujeria announcing their new album, Esto es Brujeria. It says here, on September the 15th, Mexican death grind band Brujeria will unleash their fifth full-length album, Esto es Brujeria, onto the world via Nuclear Blast Records. Pre-orders have started. The band have also released the first single from the new album entitled Mochado. There's a visualizer for that. We're going to check it out in a second. It says here, one Brujo comments, feel and know the Mexican power with ancient roots all the way to the modern world of social media, filled with brutal and rabid songs. Esto es Brujeria. I fucking love this band. I know that they're not the most serious band. They're not a band that the folks that want to engage in intellectual snobbery are going to enjoy. But I've always liked them. I don't really think they have a bad record. And I tell you what, if you want to have a fucking blast, make sure you see these guys live. They are fantastic. So let's hear what Mochado sounds like.
You know, fucking Phil. Oh, my fucking eyes! Look at my eyes! It fucking kills me! Stop fucking... Where is this here? Oh, my fucking... Look at my eyes! It fucking kills me!
Nada del mundo me pica más que ser una víctima de trata rata. Seguro mi vida será corta, cada día se mocha más. Mi diversión son las drogas, ya saben que necesito una. Conseguí grapas del perrito que me dejó sangrando del hocico. Muchas fuerzas de la vida cortan todo lo que necesita.
No surprises. I mean, I would say ever since Shane Embry has joined the band, which I think was about 2 albums ago now, maybe a little longer, he's definitely brought a bit more of that old school death grind aesthetic to them musically. Taking them away a bit from what Dino Cazares of Fear Factory was doing. I do think the best Brujeria album for me personally is Brujerismo, and I am very partial to a couple of songs on the Raza Odiada. I really love Matando Hueros as well. But this, I think ever since Shane joined the band, he's definitely tried to go back closer to the Matando Hueros, era than they were previously, or than they had kind of progressed to. But I mean, I don't think this is going to win over any new fans, but I think Brujeria are at a place now where they don't really give a shit. And as far as I'm concerned, as a fan, this definitely does it for me, and I will be looking forward to the next record.
Nada del mundo me pica más que ser una víctima de trata rata. Seguro mi vida será corta, cada día se mocha más. Busco este puto solo rata que me dio rocas de mierda. Trae de la buena, reina buena, y mira esta víctima chaca fea. Con mierda que hace nada, lo ha cortado hasta la verga. En busca de energía callejera, no quiero más chingaderas, pero lo que encuentro es pura mierda. me da bajón, me deja sin fuerza, está pisando mi medicina, me roban las fuerzas, me dejan sin ganas, cortando mis vitaminas, acabando mi...
Oh, that sounds fucking absolutely brilliant. I don't know what it is about Spanish that sounds so cool to me when it comes to, when it comes to extreme metal and doing songs in Spanish. I just think it sounds awesome. Same as Portuguese. I would actually very much like to be able to speak Spanish, but unfortunately, when it comes to learning new languages, I'm bilingual in Afrikaans and English, but I think that's pretty much the ceiling of what I'm capable of absorbing. Right, anyway, next up we've got Dandelion. They've got a new album coming in September. Speaking of Spanish, they are Spanish black metalers, and this is their 9th studio album. It's called Fatum. It gets released on September the 8th, 2023 via Non-Servium Records. The band from Vigo, Galicia, have also unveiled the first single, Novena Wake Begins, in the form of a lyric video. Fatum is the declaration of our comeback. We're a black metal band with many years of experience, and we're all about it. We think this is our best work, comments the band. Pretty cool-looking album cover. I can't really recall having spent any great degree of time listening to Dandelion, but we're going to spend some time with them right now. That bit right there is where the song is kicking into really, really high gear for me. The beginning was okay. It wasn't blowing me away. But at about the 1 minute mark, when that sequence that we're busy listening to right now, when that kicks in, that's when this becomes super interesting. Interesting they talk about this being a comeback. Their previous record came out in 2021, Time to Pass Away. So I don't know whether they were meant to break up at that song, or sorry, that record. They just decided in a reasonably short space of time that, this breaking up business isn't for us. But I wouldn't exactly say they're a band in need of a comeback. Also, fun fact, their logo is designed by the great Christoph Spadell, who did the logo for the podcast that you're listening to right now. He also did the logo for Emperor, Moonspell, and a host of other legendary bands. But, all right, my friends, let's get back to it. Two thumbs up from me, and definitely add that to the list of albums that I'm looking forward to hearing between now and the end of the year. And as we keep saying, that list is becoming ever so stacked. Once again, last week we spoke about Marduk, Oranzi Pazuzu, Cryptopsy, Dying Fetus. We're going to listen to a Dying Fetus track in just a bit. Incantation, Cannibal Corpse. I mean, the year, or between now and the end of the year, the list of bands that are going to be releasing albums is off the fucking scale. And then we've got a load of underground stuff coming out as well. Obviously, I mentioned Drugoth. Sick just released their new record. So, yeah, it's a good time to be a fan of heavy music. Thy Art is Murder premiere their new music video. One of the big surprises of 2023 so far, a band I had more or less written off completely. I am not a fan of deathcore, but their last song I thought was fucking excellent. Australia's deathcore heavyweights, Thy Art is Murder, have released a storming new single entitled Carez. It is the second taste of new music lifted from the band's forthcoming album Godlike, and that is going to be out on September the 15th via Human Warfare. Check out the video below. I don't know if it's my imagination, but I'm picking up a little bit of a an industrial vibe with some of the riffing and some of the vocal interplay at the beginnings of the song. It's not grabbing me as much as that first single, but I'm not hating it either. I think, again, musically, these guys have always been excellent performers. There's no doubt about that. It's about whether or not the music can stay, like whether or not a whole album of songs that sound like this can keep my interest. That has always been the question about Thy Art is Murder. But like I said, I'm not hating this, not at all. Interesting, I didn't realize that they had dropped from Nuclear Blast, because they were on Nuclear Blast for, I think, at least their last 2-3 records. Human Warfare is a Australian label, very small. I think it might, as a matter of fact, be run by the guys from Thy Art is Murder. But yeah, interesting that they have decided to go the independent route, but I would imagine they probably feel like they've got enough of a name and enough of a brand right now that they can afford to go it alone, and they don't need a label. But yeah, like I said, so far so good. I'm not quite as impressed as I was with the previous single, but I'm certainly not scrapping Godlike from my list of anticipated releases for this year. Liking that breakdown, and I'll tell you what I also quite like is this music video. Even though I'm not a big fan of music videos, this has got some seriously high production values, for especially when it comes to, you know, metal music or extreme music videos. You know, there's no old men in underwear running around on a beach. You know, it looks slick. It's well produced. So yeah, I might need to see if I can get somebody from Thy Art Is Murder on the podcast, because there's a lot of things about this band I find fascinating. Another thing I find fascinating that I wanted to talk about for just a second is the stupidity behind the people that run the Ace of Cups Club in Columbus, Ohio. So I woke up this morning to a post on Facebook from my friend Brock of Panzerfaust. I'm going to talk first and foremost about what Ace of Cups wrote, and then I'll talk about the response that Panzerfaust posted on their Facebook page. But long story short, it seems to me like Panzerfaust arrived in good faith in Columbus, Ohio, ready to rock the place. And shortly before going on stage, the managers over at the Ace of Cups decided that they were going to pull the plug for reasons I'm sure you can all guess. So it says on their Facebook page, the post reads, "In regards to last night, we became aware during last night's show that one of the bands on stage aligned with white supremacy and far-right ideologies. This was a show booked by an outside promoter, Starwood Presents, and not the bar directly. We failed to do our due diligence by looking into these bands prior to the show. We became aware of the issue as the show was happening and promptly removed the band from our venue to save the fees of the folks that were in attendance. It's understanding that the band in question that we removed last night was added to the tour after the show was booked, and Starwood was unaware of this band's horrible beliefs. When it was brought to us, we immediately told him to remove the band, and he immediately agreed and acted. Yay him. We are all truly sorry for not catching it sooner, and we represent responsibility for not preventing this before it happened. If you've been to our venue or talked to any of our staff, you know that we do not associate with or tolerate this type of behavior. Moving forward, we promise we will do better to vet the bands brought in by our outside promoters as well as the shows we bring in ourselves. We want to create a space that is safe for others to enjoy live music and events in. To add, the band was Panzerfaust." So I mean, we know, because we've had Brock on the podcast twice, there is nothing far right about the band whatsoever. You know, as a matter of fact, I think that Brock himself is pretty center-left, if we had to make this a political discussion, even though he's pretty quiet about his politics, as the band have been themselves. But of course, they attended a march against vaccine mandates, and when it comes to the woke, you can't possibly do something like that. That's verboten. Now, anyway, I think that the Panzerfaust response to this was probably a masterclass in how bands should respond to attempts to cancel them, because I think the worst thing that you can do in a case like this is to apologize, and that is something that they most certainly did not do. So they said, yeah, it has come to our attention that defamatory and slanderous allegations have been made against us by last night's venue, Ace of Cups in Columbus, Ohio. Let it be known that we will not, under any circumstances, be making any groveling apologies. Fuck yes. These allegations of supposed far-right sympathies are false, as any Panzerfaust listener already knows. If the Ace of Cups has evidence, present it now. No such evidence has or ever will exist. We have already sought legal counsel and will be seeking damages and financial compensation for this indiscretion. For any of those who, despite any evidence, continue to entertain these absurd notions, let us be the first to tell you that you can take a number, get in line, and kiss our fucking asses. Panzerfaust out. That, my friends, is how you deal with the woke mob, without a shadow of a doubt. Shockingly, of course, there are still people posting fucking trash, like some of the comments I'm about to read to you now. One gentleman, I'm going to not name names because, again, you know, you don't know what sort of fucking psychopaths you're dealing with online, but one guy writes, "I doubt they have Nazi sympathies, but then again, they were part of the KKK convoy." That, of course, is the protests that took place in Canada against the vaccine mandates, the trucker protests. They said that one other buffoon writes, "Didn't you openly support the Freedom Convoys, which was a far-right movement?" Who else writes something completely and utterly ridiculous here? One guy did write, "I would recommend the drummer wear a Hillary Clinton mask while performing to avoid these types of allegations." That is pretty funny. One person wrote something completely ridiculous here that I want to repeat to you guys as well. Although he seems to have deleted it. One dude also happened to say, which I think is completely insane, that seeking legal damages is a bit of a bitch move. I fucking hope that they sue the Ace of Cups into non-existence. Because if you break down the statement, Ace of Cups are basically saying, we heard from someone that Panzerfaust was aligned to the far right. No evidence, no nothing. We heard from someone. So we were acting on a feeling more than pretty much anything else. So if you do that and you then slander a band publicly, we all know what happens when you try and align a band to the far right. I mean, you just look at what's happened to Ecclese. As soon as that connection is made by social media, by the media generally speaking, that just causes all sorts of fucking pain for a band. They've tried to do it with Black Braid recently, and they try to do it with basically any band that they can, because you've got a bunch of people online, don't have jobs, don't have anything productive to do with their time, and so they try and spend their time cancelling people. But that being said, when you do that to someone without any sort of evidence whatsoever, you cause them a huge amount of reputational damage, or certainly the risk of reputational damage, and frankly, you're wasting people's fucking time. The band turned up at the venue ready to play, and the rug got pulled out from under them. You deserve to get sued. And I hope that they do, and I hope that the Ace of Cups gets shut down and put out of business for good. Fuck those guys. And as far as Panzerfaust is concerned, they know that they have a very, very staunch supporter in yours truly and this podcast. Okay, next up we've got Luster, a new album coming, first single streaming. Luster from the Netherlands are excited to announce that their fourth full-length album, Under Months Maner, will be released on October the 13th, 2023 via Prophecy Productions. Pre-orders have already started, and the band have shared an official music video for Kunstlicht. If I am not mistaken, Luster is a preferred band of Mark Morris of Mark's Metal Minute fame, which you should definitely check out on Instagram if you aren't doing already. I do remember enjoying the last Luster album. But it wasn't a mainstay. I think it came out in 2022, if I'm not mistaken. It wasn't a mainstay that year. But let's see if the new one can change that. There's something about this that reminds me a bit of Code, and there's a couple of other bands that I'm thinking about as well. Octurus, maybe a little bit. I must have gotten them mistaken with another band, because their last record came out in 2019. It's called Het Wassen Oog. And I am not hating this though. I can't remember listening to Het Was een Oog. I think there must have been another Dutch black metal band that Mark was a fan of that he turned me on to, but it wasn't this. Farsot is the other band that I'm thinking about, and I do know Farsot have got a new album in the works as well, which I'm very excited about because I think they are fucking sensational. But so far so good on this one. Let's get back to it. I think that's another 2 thumbs up without a shadow of a doubt, and I tell you who I know will enjoy this, my friend Ralph Schmidt of Ultha. Speaking of Ultha, I will be at the Reaper Fest on the 28th and the 29th of July, taking place at the Hairy Dog in Derby, featuring a command performance by the Ruins of Beverast, Ultha, Heathen Deity, and a host of other bands. Sidious will be on stage, Darker will be on stage. I am going to be doing a number of face-to-face interviews there, so brace yourself because August is going to be an exciting month. The one I'm looking forward to most, of course, is the one with Ultha. Getting to hang out with Ralph finally in person is going to be fucking badass. But if you are going to go to Reaper Fest and you see me, come and say hello. It'd be great to meet a couple of you as well. That is one that definitely earns 2 thumbs up from yours truly. So the next one we have to look at, Devin Townsend launches live version of Forgive Me. Devin Townsend recently announced the 3rd release in his Devolution series, Empath Live in America, which will be released on the 4th of August 2023. He has shared the below live performance of the Casualties of Cool track Forgive Me. The Devolution series so far has comprised some unique live performances, and this one is no different. Empath Live in America is a document of the tour that was cut short in early 2020 due to the onset of the pandemic. Devin explains, "Hello everyone, continuing in the Devolution series of albums, which has been an avenue for us to release cool little curiosities on the side of regular releases. We bring you Devolution number 3, Empath Live in America. This was a very unique tour for me and one that was regrettably cut short by the pandemic. It was a stripped back version of the Order of Magnitude band without a choir and a few other members. But as I try to do with each tour, the goal was to make this unique and special. Therefore, this tour marked a free-form version of the material. There were no backing tracks, click tracks, or even a set list, so every night was unique and different. The audience yelled out requests and we just rolled with it. The material was therefore interpreted in unique ways, and the experience was a very special fly by the seat of our pants musical night. It's a raw and off-kilter performance, and I'm thrilled to have documented it until the next real release. I hope you enjoy this rarity from a special, albeit ill-fated tour." I quite like the concept of something free-form like that, as much as I don't enjoy Devin Townsend really post Strapping Young Lad. There are a couple of his solo stuff that I think is cool. Obviously, we've heard a few on the news rant, and actually Casualties of Cool was surprisingly enjoyable. But, man, it's those major chord songs that I just can't dig. But anyway, let's hear what this sounds like. suddenly remember why why I quite like this. It kind of reminds me of the music you hear when you go to an audio show. There's something very, very hi-fi about this. And by the way, if you live anywhere near Ascot, Reading Way here in the UK, I'm definitely going to be going to the Ascot Hi-Fi show, which I think, I'm just going to double check on the date right now. I believe takes place on September the 29th to October the 1st. So if you're going to go check that out, then it would be awesome to say hello to a couple of you over there. But yeah, I mean, this is hardly Grim nor Necro. I mean, I would say not even hardly. It's the anti-Grim. But there's something about it I find quite appealing. And you know, as much as there's a bunch of his other stuff, like, we know, when he's trying to do cheerful heaviness, that just leaves me fucking cold. This I don't hate. Okay, friends, let's move on to the next one. This is the one, of course, that we headlined the flagship track of the news rant this week. A new song by Dying Fetus. It says here, Dying Fetus album coming in September. We'll search for the new video in just a second on YouTube, but it says here, Death Metal Overlords Dying Fetus are set to return with their new album entitled Make Them Beg for Death, which is due out on September the 8th via Relapse Records. It was recorded in Baltimore with a longtime producer, Steve Wright, and mixed by Mark Lewis. Can you think of a harder album title than Make Them Beg for Death? I mean, you know, an album title that is more Dying Fetus than that, I can't think of. And it just sounds awesome. The band will go on tour in the United States this autumn with support from the Acacia Strain, Despised Icon, Creeping Death, and Tactosa. The Feast of Ashes video, directed by Brian Codile, is age-restricted and only available on YouTube, so we'll check that out. Obviously, the video that they did for Wrong One to Fuck With was itself age-restricted, so I'm not surprised that they've done something similar here. But I mean, again, not going to lie, I have already listened to this song. Normally, as I've said, I try and keep as many of these songs fresh, so that, you know, when I listen to it, that's the first time that, you know, I'm reacting to it, like when I do the news rant. But you know, New Dying Fetus is New Dying Fetus, my friends. I can't sleep on that. Let's hear what they've gotten up to this time round.
Fuck you!
By the way, I've not seen the music video yet. I have heard the song, but music video I've not seen. Music video looks pretty gnarly so far.
I don't think you want to fuck with me. I'm the wrong one to fuck with.
It's Dying Fetus. I mean, that's just it's all there is to say. There is nothing new that they've attempted here. You know, there's no melody, there's no keyboards, there's no choirs in the background. There's only hard shit. Knuckle dragging, primitive, caveman death metal that is so aggressive it borders on the absurd. And I fucking love it. Top notch all the way as far as I'm concerned. Of the big bands that have brought out new singles over the course of the last month, we've got Cannibal Corpse, we've got Dying Fetus, Incantation, Cryptopsy. This is my favorite by far. I like all four, so I'm not hating or throwing shade at anyone, but this is my favorite without a shadow of a doubt. Dying Fetus is one of my favorite death metal bands, period. You know, and I think when we do that countdown of my favorite death metal, or our favorite death metal albums of the 2000s, Do not be surprised if the Fetus doesn't feature heavily in that. Also, once again, I have to say, what a crazy thing that this band has become as popular as they've become. The only real criticism I have of anything about Dying Fetus at the moment is that this list of names going out on tour with them. The Acacia Strain, Despised Icon, 2 good bands. Creeping Death, decent band. Tectosa. There's one band that's missing, and that band is Werewolves. They would have been the perfect band for Dying Fetus to take out on tour with them. Similar attitude, similar vibe. Not quite as heavy, but I think they would have been perfect touring partners. Maybe I'm biased, but I suspect a fair few of you will agree with me. Hard shit. I mean, these guys just mix groove with the technical stuff so perfectly. It's fucking brilliant. By the way, I have got episode 200 around the corner. How fucking cool would it be to have John Gallagher on this podcast for episode 200? So, I mentioned this in passing, but I also just want to say thanks again, because I know how many of you, when you buy music or when you are, messaging bands on social media, whatever, you guys are mentioning the podcast. I cannot tell you how much that helps the show. A lot of people we've gotten on this podcast because of the fact that you guys have made noise, you've introduced people to the show, so the work you've done to help get the word out, number one, is hugely appreciated. Number two, if I can steer your enthusiasm in any great one direction, John Gallagher, that would be absolutely killer. He'd be one of the people I would most want to have on this podcast, without a doubt. Okay, I think we have gotten pretty much to the bit that we left off at last week. So we're going to go to We Are the Pit and see what's cooking on there. The first headline they've got is, guess which Metallica songs have the most streams by playing a new game? I can pretty much guess it would be Enter Sandman, Nothing Else Matters. I'm not sure who else, but I'm not going to bother going through the entire article. It says, next one is David Crosby was not impressed by Eddie Van Halen, didn't think he changed the world of guitar. David Crosby is a smoked out old hippie whose ravings should be taken with a grain of salt. Speaking of ravings being taken with a grain of salt, I co-opted that from a line out of The Sopranos. I'm busy rewatching that because most of what is new at the moment as far as long-form, serious television drama is concerned is just does nothing for me. I attempted to watch Shining Girls on Apple TV, and I made it about 20 minutes of the first episode, and I just couldn't stand it anymore. Good cast, but a moribund program. I'll tell you what is absolutely fucking fantastic, though, and that is The Righteous Gemstones Season 3. If you're not watching that yet, or if you haven't checked out the previous 2 seasons, first of all, go and watch those immediately. But secondly, Season 3 is up and running right now. I think they're up to episode 6 by the time that you hear this podcast. It is absolutely hysterical. I think that David Gordon Green, yes, I've got my issues with him when he dips into the horror movie stuff. Yeah, he and I think Danny McBride is actually part of this Exorcist remake. That gets poo-pooed by me without a shadow of a doubt. But when they do comedy, they are fucking brilliant. Eastbound and Down was fantastic. Vice Principals was brilliant. And Righteous Gemstones is probably the funniest thing on television right now, given that Curb Your Enthusiasm doesn't have a new season running. All right. Next, we've got sad news. Founding Biohazard drummer Anthony Mayo is dead after battle with cancer. Very sad news, actually. It says, yeah, Biohazard drummer Anthony Mayo has sadly passed away yesterday, July 14th, due to cancer. The musician was the founding drummer for Biohazard and played on the band's very first demo. The musician's bandmates posted about him asking for prayers just before his passing. Biohazard singer-guitarist Billy Graziade posted on Instagram, "This is Anthony Mayo. Without him, there would be no Biohazard. He was our first drummer and brought us all together. Our lives would have probably continued on the same destructive path, or who knows, had Mayo not introduced Bobby and Evan, who I already knew from someone else. We had some crazy times together. Thank you, Mayo. Please keep him in your prayers." Yeah, very sad news. I don't know how old he was. I would assume early 50s. Early 50s is way, way, way too young for a man to pass away. So thoughts and prayers go out to his family. Yeah, man. If you are of a certain age, I'd say especially late 30s, early 40s, make sure you're taking care of your health. I know too many people who are my age or nearer my age, 43, who are having heart issues and having other... I actually had a friend reach out to me a while back and tell me that he's had 2 heart attacks, including one in the doctor's surgery. He's 42 years old. So, those are there's some sobering realities about getting older. We don't always feel older, but yeah. Definitely, make sure you get your ass to a doctor, get a physical done every year. And most importantly, make sure you get your ass to the gym. All right, next up, we have got Arizona drivers can now rock an Alice Cooper license plate. All right, Metallica's hit song Fuel used in sick NASA video. I absolutely despise that song. The rap tour every heavy metal fan needs to attend in 2023. That is, of course, a misleading headline because there is no rap tour that a heavy metal fan should attend in 2023. The last great rap tours probably occurred nearer 1993. The greatest New York City heavy metal bands. Let's see what they say. They've got 10 listed here. Typo negative, agree. Anthrax, disagree. Marauder, possibly agree, but I see them more as hardcore rather than heavy metal. They do have one fucking genius song that is a mainstay on my gym playlist, and that is Life is Pain. Helmet, don't agree. Suffocation, definitely agree. Immolation, 1,000,000,000% agree. Biohazard, 1,000,000,000,000% agree. Sick of it all, I can live with that. Prong, love that band. I definitely think they are massively underrated. And then Swans is on there. Disgracefully absent, Tombs. That should be at the very top of the list. Lamb of God's Randy Blythe has cut off his dreads. I don't even know why that became a fucking headline, but it is. Slash joins Demi Lovato for Sorry Not Sorry, a rock version. Demi Lovato is a deluded fool. I think that she is desperate for attention. I think she has a very limited amount of talent, and she is delusional and an imbecile. Speaking of delusional imbeciles, there were a couple of them that came out of the woodwork in response to my my episode with Katie last week. But one of them, and again, maybe I'll leave this nameless, but one of them has now blocked her on social media, presumably for what she said on the podcast, which to me is a massive win for our side. So, and also, again, I just want to say thank you very much for the support for that episode. I think we hit over 3,000 views on YouTube alone. I think was it Chartable? We were number 23 in Sweden. Really, really crazy numbers for that episode. You guys love yourself a Katie and Jackson conversation, so we'll definitely have a couple more at some point. But yeah, always fun having her on, but absolutely brilliant seeing how people responded to it. Here's one. He is Legend surprised to find actor Michael Shannon at their show. I'm a big fan of Michael Shannon. If you haven't watched Boardwalk Empire, make sure that you watch that because he is fucking brilliant in that. Let's take up one more, and then we'll wrap things up. Body Count is mixing their new album, Merciless. They're always good for like one or two decent songs on their last couple of records. I think that the last really, really good album that they did was the one that had Enter the Dark Side on it. What was that album called? I need to remind myself. I see that apparently they're not. They weren't considered metal enough for Metal Archives, which I think is a bit. I think is a bit of a jip, because I mean they are a metal album. That album I was talking about is Manslaughter. There's some very good songs on there. Pop Bubble is great. Talk Shit Get Shot is very good. Actually, is Talk Shit Get Shot on Manslaughter? Yeah, it is. Wanna Be a Gangster, fucking brilliant. The song Manslaughter is great. So yeah, that's a good album. And then after that, you know, like I said, they've had like probably like one or two decent songs on Bloodlust and Carnivore, but I always like them. Pantera plays abbreviated set at Wisconsin's Rockfest due to severe weather. New Guns N' Roses single is coming any day now. As I've said before, if it is anything as atrocious as that fucking train wreck Hard School that they did, then they can save it. All they're doing is sullying their reputation with that mucky muck. And folks, I think that is pretty much it. I don't think there's anything else here much to talk about. As a matter of fact, hang on for just a second. It says here, Fear Factory guitarist says venues taking cut of artists' merchandise sales is making it harder for bands to survive. This one I have given my opinion on before. I think it's a fucking disgrace. And I'm actually with him on this one. It says, in a new interview with the Razor's Edge, Fear Factory guitarist Dino Cazares once again opened up about the realities of post-pandemic touring, including increased travel expenses, gas tour, buses, hotels, flight costs. He said, as transcribed by blabbermouth.net, it's kind of like just life in general. Anybody who has a normal job, you're still getting paid $10 an hour, but your rent went up, your insurance went up. That's called inflation, my friend. It's called inflation, and it's what happens when the government just willy-nilly spends money on all sorts of fucking bullshit, including paying people to sit at home and do nothing during COVID. It's kind of like how it's been for bands as well. Promoters are only willing to pay you as much, but everything else went up. Now the club owners and the promoters are taking a cut of your merchandise, so it's making it harder and harder for artists to survive out there. Of course, they're only going to be willing to pay you so much because their overheads have gone up as well. But I do have to say, and I strongly agree with this, with what Dino is saying, yeah, I think venues that ask for a cut of the merchandise, that to me is fucking extortion. I mean, that is literally what it is. Because, you know, the dynamic has always been merchandise carries the booze, or they get the benefits of selling booze. You're the band, you know, drawing in the punters, and then, you know, you can make money off of ticket sales and off of merch. If anything, I would argue that the bands need to start asking for a cut of the bar. And I would say if I were in a band and a venue owner were to say to me, you know, we're going to take 20% of your merch, I'd say, no problem, I'm taking 20% of the bar. If this is, you know, if we're all in this together, then surely we need to, you know, share and share alike. Asked if merchandise cuts that the promoters are taking from artists are getting larger than they were in the past, Dino said yes. That's been the whole debate, and it's getting larger and larger. Of course, there's always been a percentage that you have to give to venues. That's just how it is. It's fucking bullshit. Merch percentage, we're talking about merch percentage, but of course it's getting higher and higher. So unfortunately the fans are the ones who have to pay for that, because once merch percentages get higher that the venue takes, then you're going to have to raise your prices on a t-shirt. That's just inevitable. That's unfortunate, but that's what happens. If I were a band, I would refuse to play any venue that asks for a merch cut. I would say if bands truly want to see a change here, then they should all boycott those venues until those venues are out of business, and support venues who don't do this shit, because I know there are some that don't. And on that note, my friends, it is time to wrap up the news rant for this week. That wraps up another episode of Into the Necrosphere. I hope that you have all enjoyed listening to it as much as I did recording it. I'm back next week with Christian Larson of Necrofire. I've got a couple of big names in the hopper. So make sure that you guys get back here every Tuesday, because there are a lot of exciting things coming your way. And once again, I just want to say massive thank you to everybody for your support. This podcast goes from strength to strength every week, it feels. And I see your comments. I see your great feedback. I see everybody sharing the show. And I just want to say again, I really, really appreciate it. It is not something I would ever take for granted. I mentioned it before. I'll say it again. It has been one of the great joys of my life doing this podcast, and I plan to continue until I am a old, over-the-hill, dusty old fart. But anyways, my friends, I'm going to play out with another death metal classic. We spoke about it earlier on in the show. I'm going to remind you all of the greatness of Fear, Emptiness, Despair by Napalm Death. My favorite song off that record, A Plague Rages. That'll be coming your way very shortly. But in the meantime, whatever it is that you're doing, wherever it is that you are, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you bad motherfuckers again next week.
Turn up, we